Good evening, Wakefield. Welcome to our Town Council meeting of September 28th, 2022. It is 6:36. I call this meeting to order, and we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great, and we are going to go through, we are going to do attendance. I see Counselor Smith-Galvin. I see Counselor Chines, Counselor Dennehy, Counselor McLean. Is Counselor Bob Vincent on the Zoom?
I do not see him on the Zoom yet.
Okay, well, we have 5 people, so we can proceed. We are going to executive session to discuss a police contract because an open session may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the town, with the intent of returning to open session immediately thereafter. To go into executive session, we need to take a roll call vote. Counselor Smith-Galvin. Oh,
Make a motion?
yes. Yes, we have a motion.
Second.
Seconded by Julie. Any discussion? And Counselor Smith-Galvin.
Yes.
Counselor Chines?
Yes.
Counselor Dennehy?
Yes.
Counselor McLean?
Yes.
And myself, yes, that's 5-0. We will go into executive session, and we will call you back when we are ready. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. And I'm just going to retake attendance that we've got everyone present with Bob Vincent on Zoom and the rest of us in this studio. With that, I will go to item 5, public engagement. Sherry, do we have anyone for public engagement? I see you nodding shaking your head.
Yeah, Bob is not on Zoom yet, but I'm expecting him to join again. But we do have one for public engagement. We have Mr. Brian Boyd, Executive Director of WCAT.
Great, come on up, Ryan.
I have a good chief. Don't worry. Hi, everyone. Ryan Boyd, Executive Director,
Wakefield Community Access Television. Thank you for being here tonight. I'm here on behalf of WCAT and its Board of Directors to request that the Town Council approve Wakefield Community Access Television's proposal for American Rescue Plan Act funds in the total amount requested. In March of 2020, WCAT was asked by town leaders to help create and execute new systems for bringing local government meetings and school events to town residents to comply with mandated social distancing. Since then, our team of 5 has helped record, process, archive, and broadcast over 830 additional government meetings. That's on top of our previous workload. That's roughly 360 meetings per year, or an additional 29 per month. We hired additional staff to support this endeavor. WCAT spent significant funds making facility and equipment upgrades for implementing hybrid meetings so Wakefield could continue functioning with some sense of regularity. WCAT increased streaming and broadcast coverage of school sporting events, school concerts and performances, and graduations so that the community could watch their students perform and achieve essential milestones from a safe distance. Before submitting our proposal to Town Council, our team and Board of Directors spent significant time reviewing and analyzing the additional staff time and expenditures that we encountered to serve Wakefield during this extraordinary period. It's important to note for those at home that WCAT is not funded through tax dollars. 92% of our funding comes through franchise fees from local cable subscribers. This proposal will help replenish the funds WCAT incurred during the pandemic. It will pay for the added services provided to the town and the school system, and allow us to continue this important work well into the future without costing taxpayers a dime. Wakefield Community Access Television has been a trusted partner in this community for 3 decades. We were there to support the town council, town hall, and town residents in March of 2020 when no one knew what would happen next. WCAT was there for you to help town meetings in the field house. And this organization has done everything it can to help this community during this time. The staff has put in thousands of additional hours to provide services that were essential to keeping the community informed and safe throughout the pandemic. So, councilors, I ask that you are there for us tonight and in 2 weeks when you vote on this proposal. And to the CAT staff and Board of Directors, I want to say thank you. Thank you for the commitment that you continue to show this community. Thank you for your hard work and dedication. And thanks for keeping things fun during a difficult time. None of what we have accomplished would have been possible without all of you. So please, councilors, I ask you to please do the right thing and support this proposal in its entirety. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Sherry, anyone else?
No, Madam Chair, that's all for tonight.
Okay, great. So moving on to item 6, updates. We have 6A is the police department, and we are joined by Chief Steve Scory. The floor is yours.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. I have some updates on what's been going on in the police department, and I will start with building updates. So I have, let's see if I can get this to work here.
So it's showing up behind you.
Oh, it is?
Oh, there we go.
Okay,
Perfect.
there we go. So I took these two picture's quick because I snuck into the construction area without a hard hat and I didn't want to get yelled at. So the first picture on the left is our new dispatch area, and the picture on the right is how the new lobby looks today. So this is phase one of the project. Phase one includes the lobby, police dispatch, fire administration, police records, and our interview room on the first floor. And based on the meeting yesterday, it looks like this will get turned over to us within the next 2 weeks for us to move into our new dispatch center. The lobby may not open until another week or two after that, based on the lead time of some hardware for the vestibule door. But as you can see, it's close to being a finished product. So we're pretty excited about that. Phase two is ahead of schedule, which is the construction on the front of the building, the addition. So this phase here was a little slower because of some unforeseen circumstances, but we're getting there. So hopefully within the next few weeks, we'll be operational in our new dispatch center. Moving on, this summer, this past August, we were able to bring back our popular Rad Kids Program, which was on hold for a few years due to COVID. This is really popular with the kids and popular with the parents because they can leave their kids with us for the week and do what they like to do. So we had 2 week-long classes, total of 47 students. It's taught by school resource officers, Kelly Tobine, Mike Pietrantonio, and Matt Malone. They do a great job with this, and it focuses on life skills and self-defense. And then at the end of the program, there's a little demonstration for each kid to show their parent what they've learned throughout the week, and they get a nice certificate at the end. So it's a lot of fun for them and fun for the parents as well. We were lucky enough to receive a municipal road safety grant this year for a total of $34,760. And we received that from the Executive Office of Public Safety and Security. And it supports the Municipal Road Safety Program, and the purpose of this program is to develop enforcement strategies to reduce roadway crashes, injuries, and fatalities. So we will use these funds to educate the public about adhering to speed limits, seatbelt use, and road safety, as well as monitoring dangerous practices such as distracted and impaired driving. You'll see extra officers on patrol specifically assigned to traffic enforcement campaigns, which you'll see advertised. They're called winter impaired driving, distracted driving, click it or ticket, summer speed enforcement, and summer impaired driving enforcement. And these are campaigns that are promoted by the Mass Department of Transportation. And it helps us put some extra officers on the road to enforce these unsafe practices that most of us see out there. Moving on, this is exciting business here. Lieutenant Joe Anderson graduated from the 283rd session of the FBI National Academy on September 13th. The National Academy is a 10-week program at the FBI's training facility in Quantico, Virginia, that provides enhanced education in communications, leadership, and officer wellness. Lieutenant Anderson's session consisted of 235 law enforcement officers from 49 states, 21 different countries, 5 military organizations, and 5 federal law enforcement agencies. Nationally, fewer than 1% of law enforcement officers have the opportunity to attend the National Academy. And Lieutenant Anderson is the 9th Wakefield police officer to complete the National Academy. So as of right now, everybody in our top command staff has attended the National Academy, which is quite an accomplishment. We've had some personnel changes. This Friday, Officer Kevin Carey will be graduating from the Police Academy. He's attending the 22-week basic recruit officer training course at the Lowell Police Academy, and he was hired to replace Officer Gerald Holleran, who retired in March. Before he starts patrolling on his own, Officer Carey will have to complete 12 weeks of in-house training with a field training officer. Unfortunately, for us, Officer Jeanette DeMasi left the Wakefield Police Department on June 30th, and she left to take a job as a special agent with Immigrations and Customs Enforcement. As Jeanette's dream to always be an investigator, and the opportunity came up for her to join ICE, and they promised her a special agent position in Boston, which is very rare. So she couldn't pass that opportunity up. Sad to see her go, but it was a better opportunity for her, so we're happy for her. So some of the challenges that we face right now are, the biggest challenge is personnel. Hiring and retention of law enforcement officers has become a national problem, which is affecting us here in Wakefield as well. Just to give you an idea of the numbers, in 2013, there were 16,727 Massachusetts residents who took the entry-level civil service police exam. That number dwindled to 8,900 in 2021 for a decrease of 47%. Our current civil service list here in Wakefield has 26 names, which reflects the decline in the number of people expressing interest in law enforcement career. Typically, in the past, we would see anywhere from 50 to 100 names on our list. Now we're at 26. To try and get people, to encourage them to take the exam, the 2021 exam, we tried to boost those numbers by taking out a 6-week ad in the Wakefield Daily Item. And we posted a recruitment video to our Facebook page and department website. The real challenge for us is, as we look ahead, is that we have 10 officers eligible to retire over the course of the next 5 years. That's a huge number. That's almost 25% of our department. So when you look at the number of people that we have on our civil service list and how many that we'll have to replace, we're looking at different ideas on how we can turn around the interest in this job. And like I said, this isn't unique to Wakefield. It's not unique to the state of Massachusetts. This is a national issue. I know that in, I think it was Philadelphia, they lost almost 20% of their police department this year, and it's almost impossible to replace that. So that's what we're looking at in the future here in Wakefield as far as personnel is concerned. Moving on to the next subject, Officer Amy Rando had special Wakefield police patches made to help support the National Breast Cancer Awareness Month, which begins October 1st. The purpose of the campaign is to raise awareness of the disease and to raise funds for research into its cause, prevention, diagnosis, treatment, and cure. Wakefield officers will have the option of wearing these patches on their uniform shirts the month of October in lieu of their regular with WPD patches. And anyone who would like one of these patches can reach out to Officer Rando. If anybody would like to come into the station, we have plenty. We'll give them away. But she did a great job with them, as you can see. She put a lot of time and effort into it, so kudos to Amy. I'll also give Amy a little plug for Saturday. She is the organizer of the Wakefield Alliance Against Violence Road Race, which is this Saturday morning. Registration starts at 7:30. And I say I'm running it, I'll jog it. We're not looking at the time. Julie beats me every year.
I'm not going this year.
Oh,
so
you're
you
not
can win
being?
this year.
All right.
I have a work event.
I have it.
Chief, is that at the Q or Lynn Woods or
It starts at the Lord Wakefield.
at the Lord? It's
Yep.
Quantipout, okay.
It does. And I
Ed
think
beats us all.
the race kicks off at 8:30, but registration starts
I
at
think
7:30.
at 9. I think at 9.
Is it 9?
It starts at 9, yeah. Registration starts at 7:30. Waveonline.org. The Wave Group and Amy have done a fabulous job. There's some sponsors sitting around this table of the race. You might have to try to beat Jonathan's son, who
He beat
wins
me
it for
last
his
year.
age group
I was
every
going to
year.
say, not to brag for my
So-
son, but he did beat Chief last year.
and the
He set the pace. I followed him.
And the weather looks really great for Saturday. So it's its 7th annual year. If you can sign up and join us, lots of great raffle prizes as well, and a really great organization to support. So thank you for mentioning that.
And I think Amy said that this year there are more participants than any year past, which is nice. Yes, that's excellent. And the last thing I have to report on, and this is really a big deal, to be honest with you, is that on November 1st, Detectives Chris Grace and John Ryan will be receiving the George L. Hanna Memorial Award for Bravery for their actions at the scene of a homicide that occurred on January 19th of 2021. This prestigious award recognizes the bravery of members of the law enforcement community who put their lives on the line in the performance of their duties. The award will be presented by Governor Baker and Lieutenant Governor Polito at a ceremony at Mechanics Hall in Worcester. The award is named after Massachusetts State Trooper George L. Hanna, who lost his life in the line of duty on February 26, 1983. On this date, Trooper Hanna conducted a motor vehicle stop in the town of Auburn. The vehicle was occupied by 3 men and 2 women. One of the men shot Trooper Hanna 6 times, and he later died at Worcester Hospital. Trooper Hanna was left behind his wife and 3 children. So for them to receive that award, it's very difficult to receive that award. They have to be nominated. It's reviewed by a committee. and they're very selective about who gets that award. So this is actually a big deal for those two guys. So I'm happy for them. And that was the last thing I had to report on.
Well, thank you so much, Chief. You know, I had asked Steve to take time away from your schedule and invite you here, just like we did for fire 2 meetings ago with Chief Sullivan, just to kind of hear about what's going on. And thank you for sharing all the great work that your department's doing to get a bravery award and for Lieutenant Anderson to do that training. The rest of the state and the rest of the country are realizing how great your department is and how great Wakefield is. So thank you for sharing all of that. Any questions for Chief Scory while we've got him here? And then I'm going to ask Tom Walsh to join him in just a second. But anything? Jonathan?
Yeah, a couple of questions. First of all, thank you so much. I mean, I think as Chair Butt said, you know, the fact that the department, I think, is really a model for police departments, not only locally, but even beyond. And, you know, seeing the recognition for our officers, seeing Lieutenant Anderson's training is terrific, and just a testament to your leadership and the leadership of your command staff as well, in terms of, you know, making sure that as a department we're really on the leading edge. So appreciate all of the work. I had a couple of questions I wanted to ask. The first one was just related to, you know, some of the support services we have within the department, particularly for people, you know, suffering from addiction or in recovery. I know this year we expanded the hours for our clinician in the department, and just curious if you could speak about the impact that that's had. You know, is that meeting the need in the town? Is there unmet need that we're seeing? How have you seen that that expanded role play out over the last several months?
So there's definitely a strong need for the mental health clinician, and the fact that we have her now for 40 hours is a huge asset to the department. She has built a great rapport with some of her clients who come into the station voluntarily to see her. When they know that they need help and they're on the downslide, they will come to visit her. And she has tremendous resources to get people the help they need, to hook them up with the right services. And the same thing for Tracy Ascalillo. She just got married. I don't know her new last name. I have to apologize. But a recovery coach. The way they work together is tremendous. And when the clinician first started, she would ride around with our officers to get to know the community, because she's not from around here. She knows the community extremely well now. And she does a lot of independent work on her own. You'll see her walking the square. You'll see her talking to people on her own. Like I said, great rapport with people. They reach out to her for help. And she takes a lot of the workload off of our officers on the mental health aspect of this, which is huge. She's a trained clinician, and we're not. So what she does is just, any service she provides is well beyond anything that we could do. So to have her is tremendous.
Great. No, good to hear. And I think what we expected. Any sense as to, you know, are we meeting the demand that's out there? It sounds like she has some capacity to do some more proactive outreach, which is great to hear.
She does great proactive work on her own. I know the health department now has a clinician, which will be a great asset to us as well. There's always going to be a demand for work, for help in this field. It just seems like, I can tell you, over the course of my career, 20 years ago when I started, we didn't deal with mental health calls. And now it's probably 75% of our time. So, and it just continues to grow. And COVID certainly didn't help it at all. And I just see that this is something that at some point we may have a whole team of clinicians, to be honest with you. Yeah. That may be where we're at someday.
Great. Thank you. Switching gears very significantly. You know, I'm glad to hear you mention the traffic safety grant, and you know, I just wonder if you would comment on you know, any other strategies that we can take as a town around traffic safety. And you know, I think we had a couple of, you know, pretty horrific accidents this summer. You know, I'll say just personally, there's now a speed sign across the street from my house, and so, you know, seeing sort of the speeds that people drive as they come down my street, and seeing just how, you know, even if it's only a couple miles an hour over the speed limit, I mean, it, you know, from a pedestrian scale, it's really impactful. So, just curious, you know, as you think about both kind of stepping up enforcement, are there other things that, you know, you would recommend or you would want to consider as a community to help address that? I mean, should we look at reduced traffic, you know, speed limits in town? Should we look at other avenues to try to, sort of calm traffic maybe from where it is in current state.
So you've seen some towns have adopted the 25 mile per hour speed limit unless otherwise posted. I'm not completely sold on that, I'll be honest with you, because I don't believe that everyone will drive 25 miles per hour. And if we have to enforce it, we enforce it for everybody. So if you I challenge everybody to try and drive 25 miles per hour when you leave here tonight, and I guarantee you can't do it. So is it a reality? I don't think so. Other traffic calming measures we can use, in the past, we've used grant money to buy speed alert signs, which are solar powered. There's one on Lowell Street. There was one in front of your house that got
I was
run
going to say
over.
there's one across the street from my
Right.
house right now.
So we have one that's mangled in the garage because it got run over, but it tells
I think
people
that
how
was my
fast they're
street
going.
too.
And it really does slow people down. Right now, you'll see our Wakefield Police Speed Trailer is on Vernon Street, and that's a result of the accident that occurred there earlier this year. And they really do have a calming effect. So we can get some more of those signs if we have the grant money. I like the flashing pedestrian signs that you see in front of the Dolbear School. I think those are great. I think they should be in front of every school. And something I saw recently that I really liked was if you drive down Main Street in Linfield, they have these fancy looking lamppost style signs that have a digital readout of speed. Have you seen those, Madam Chair?
Yeah, I drive to my parents and I
Okay.
drive by it twice a night. Yep.
I think those are great. I don't
Yeah.
know what the cost is, they're probably not cheap, but I guarantee you they have a great calming effect on traffic. So beyond enforcement, those are some of the ideas that I would recommend.
Do you know, I mean, is there any data that, I know Stoneham and Melrose have done the 25 mile an hour speed limit. Have they collected any data around speeds?
I
or-
haven't seen data. Our speed trailer that's on Vernon Street right now actually collects data.
Yep.
So we can break down traffic reports for wherever that trailer is. But overall, for the towns, cities that have adopted the 25 mile per hour speed limit, I haven't seen any data at all.
It'd be great if
To
the
show
state
that
would
people
step in
slow
and
down.
maybe do some work in that just to understand, is there an impact? I mean, I think it's hard to say yes or no when you don't have the data behind it, but certainly understand the difficulty of kind of making that recommendation without it.
Right.
Great. All right. Well, that's all I have. Thank you again for everything, and thank you to the entire department, all the officers and leadership. It's great to have a trusted partner like WPD here with us in the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ed?
Chief, thank you for this. This was super helpful, and thank you, obviously, to the department for all that you do. I know that when you and I talk, it's often about three things: morale, recruitment, and retention. So, can you maybe just talk a little bit further about what the town can do, or what we as a council can do in any of those three regards?
That's a tough one. I'm not sure that you can do anything, because one of the biggest challenges now is with the new generation of people that we have working. This is tough to say, but everybody wants instant gratification, right? And we hire very well qualified people. We hire the best of the best. So I think that when they come to us at some point, the 3-4 year window, they get to a bit of frustration because they all want to be detectives. They would all want to be a K-9 officer because they all want to be the best that they can be. But those opportunities don't exist for everybody. So we try to keep everybody's spirits up, offer different opportunities. One of the things that I'm trying to start now is a drone unit. So I'd like to get anybody who's not already involved in another unit onto the drone unit. I'd like to have at least one officer on every shift trained to operate a drone so that if we have a missing person, we can use the drone for that. So I try to give everybody an opportunity to do something to keep them motivated. But when you have a department full of motivated people that really want to do everything that they could possibly do, it's hard to satisfy everybody.
I guess in some ways, admit that that's a good problem to have, right?
It's a great problem to have. If I was going to choose my problems, that's the one I want.
Yeah.
I have to say though, and I've said this, for as long as I've been in this council, that despite the size of our town, I would put our department up against any department, large or small, across this country, because I think we have just done a phenomenal job of recruiting and retaining just some of the best talent out there, and that comes from leadership, and that speaks a lot to your credit. So thank you for that, and thank you to the officers. They do a phenomenal job.
Thanks. Thank you.
I thought Bob had his hand up. Bob, did you have your hand up? Go.
unmute. Hey, Chief, it's difficult for me to speak tonight, but I did want to ask a question and make a comment. Massachusetts VOTEC schools offer a criminal justice curriculum. And since we have a VOTEC school in our backyard, has the police department ever in the past or explored the possibilities of working with the students over there at the VOTEC who are majoring in criminal justice?
So we looked at starting a cadet program, and we had the ball rolling on that. And unfortunately, right as we were about to get that going, COVID hit. We haven't been able to get that going since, but I do know that Wakefield High School, as well as the VOC, offer criminal justice courses. And I know that our school resource officers do help the teachers with those classes.
Okay, and I did want to comment to you that, and I don't say these things idly, I say these things when I mean them, but personally, I've worked with police departments and law enforcement agencies at the national, state, local, federal, and international level, spanning many, many states and many foreign countries throughout Europe. And I will tell you, based on my experience living here since 2014, I think we have one of the finest police departments that I've seen in my expansive experience of working with law enforcement agencies. So I commend you and your staff for the job that you've done.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Julie?
And I have to say, Jonathan and Ed covered most of what I was going to ask, but just on the roadway safety, I agree with everything you said, and while I do think we need enforcement, I think enforcement is not always the right, I think a lot of these calming practices and signage and everything are really great, and I'm glad that you're thinking about them. What is the timing for the grant? Is it just starting, it sounded like?
It's a rotating grant. We get this grant every year, but this
okay,
year
good.
we got quite a bit of money.
Okay.
And so when I see enforcement, I guess I should really clarify that. So extra officers are out there to enforce the traffic laws,
Right.
but that doesn't mean that everybody gets a traffic ticket.
Absolutely.
It's more education than anything else.
And-
Just because you get stopped for violating the law doesn't mean you're going to get a traffic ticket.
Right. Don't we have a new traffic calming policy we were looking at the Traffic Advisory Committee? So, I mean, I guess maybe I'll be interested to kind of see how that goes.
Yeah.
I know we're talking a little bit about how to expand the traffic advisory perhaps, or looking at possibly transit and thinking about biking and public transportation and all of that. So I think you know that I'm keen on this and would love to continue to work with you on it. The other thing I just wanted to say is I know you listed all the great things you're doing, and I can think of like 5 off the top of my head that you didn't mention. The helmets that you did with the kids at the Safe Streets was amazing to be out there with them. And then every time I think of our police department, I think of Officer Tobin with the dog at the COVID clinic for the kids and how much incredible comfort she brought to that. So
I should mention that was an idea that we came up with at a mental health conference that we went to out in Fitchburg State University. I think it was Greenfield PD had 2 St. Bernards as comfort dogs. And so I got talking to them and got the idea, what do you use these dogs for? Wasn't going to get a St. Bernard, too big. So just too big.
would need its own car.
Yeah, exactly. So we went with the idea of labs. Kelly did all the research. She gets all the credit. She did the research on what kind of dog served best as a comfort dog. And so we decided that the best place for the dog was at the Galvin. With kids returning to school from COVID, not having seen each other or been around other people for so long, there was a level of anxiety there. A lot of positive feedback from parents on their kids reintegrating back into the schools. And what's funny now is that, I won't say every town around us, but almost every town around us has followed our program. So it's really kind of cool. And a lot of the dogs that are out there are related to Sammy. They came from the same lab. They have the same parents. So I know Peabody has put a dog with their school resource officer. Reading has 2. There's a lot out there. And Kelly is really the model for that program. She's done a terrific job with it.
Just seeing it in action was really incredible, and I really think it reflects kind of the values and who we are as a community. So please, thank you for leading that, and thank her for taking the initiative.
Yes.
Anne?
I just don't want to be remiss. All I'm going to say is thank you, and I just reiterate, I stand with my colleagues on town council about all the excellent work that you're doing, and your department's doing. I mean, it continues to amaze me is the high function of a small town and the level of police force we have. So, thank you for keeping us safe.
Thank you.
Yeah, just to echo and add some clarification. So because Lieutenant Anderson was at that training for the summer, the Traffic Advisory Committee took a little summer break, but they will be back. They were mentioned yesterday at the high school meeting to talk about the new high school. So it will be back, and I'm sure we will get back on board on the traffic calming policy. Two things that I'm personally mentioning, and I'm surprised that Julie didn't mention it, but super excited to see the public safety building. Everyone in town has invested so much in that. I really want to see the women's locker room and the bike rack that we're going to have there. So the pictures, please put on a helmet next time and take some more pictures. That would be much appreciated. But I'm really excited for it to be open to the public and maybe doing a tour when it works of some of those areas, because we had seen where the bikes were stored before and what didn't work. To now to see it working will just be great. And like I said, everyone in town invested in that. And then the other thing, again, this is so helpful. It's always an ongoing conversation. I hope to see you back here again in January as we start our budget. So I heard you talk about drones. I heard you talk about dogs. And maybe electronic bikes for your officers. So just, as we start that budget conversation, please let us know about things that your department could use and pass on our thank you to all of them.
Absolutely.
And then if Tom Walsh wouldn't mind just joining you, because the impetus of this was, and I'm going to pass it to Steve too, but we had, as we talked about 2 weeks ago, we had a lot of fires, and all of you get called when that happens. And Tom, thank you for all your work on coordinating it. And we're hoping you could tell us a little bit about how this past summer's been and what's working and how we could help you.
Well, excuse me. Well, the summer has been a little better because COVID's starting to become not our primary situation, luckily. So as far as us, we work as a team, police, fire, DPW, health. We work, Team Wakefield, really. And we've had some programs this year. We had a couple of exercises we ran, the ASHA program, the active shooter hostile response thing we do at the schools. And so that's been pretty good. We're going to be doing probably something in that range again, probably in the next few months, but we'll sit down first because we have to iron out a few things. I've been working with the superintendent on a safety policy for the schools to revise those coming up. Basically, we're getting into revising our SENT plan, which is the emergency plan that we respond to. It's a comprehensive package, and because of the pandemic, we never really dealt with the pandemic. The last time this happened was 1918. So our crew plan, which is the continuity of operations plan, will have to be completely revised to encompass the pandemic, to say, here's what we're going to do. So you basically make up a new playbook so that I'm retired, the chief's retired, the town administrator. Next person comes in, here it is. Here's how we roll. Here's our response to what we're going to do. And so that's what I'm working on now, revising. I had the state in yesterday, and we're working with that now, myself and Jen McDonald, the communications manager. And so that's something that we'll be going into for the next probably 6 months to the year. And then that should be a fully package, which I'll give out to the council once we get it completed. And just the everyday things, like the fires come in and we respond to that. Anything that comes up, people call. If they're not calling the police or fire, they may call me, and then I try to, help. But my job is to help people. I make sure the town is safe, but after that, it's, what do you need? And then we try to see what we can do at that point. But
if I can jump in, because Tom just completely downplays what he does.
As always,
really.
yes, please.
To talk about the two fires which displaced two families, displaced them, but no one was hurt, right. which is huge. Councilor Chines used the word choreography, and I love that.
because that is exactly how police, fire, DPW, emergency management, Wakefield Gas and Light work at these events. It is absolutely unbelievable. Everybody has their job. Everybody knows their job. Everyone supports each other. And at the end, everyone supports the very distraught, of course, distraught and worried homeowner that I think in the last fire, which was, close to my neighborhood or in my neighborhood, I think Chief Scory, Tom, and I spent a lot of time talking with the poor family, including 2 little girls, 3 and 1, I believe,
Yes.
were their ages, and trying to kind of help them manage through through it until family members could come and take them, and really just to see how the whole team works from start to finish, as I said it before, is unbelievable. So thank you to you and all your men
Thank you.
and women that really do a fabulous job, and maybe they can talk a little bit about it now. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yeah. Do you want to say anything else?
No, it's just that I know what the town is saying, but if you remember, I did 35 years in the fire service. I did 10 as the emergency management director for the city. So I forget that, it's like secondhand, okay, we're helping and we're doing it and we're going through. And we did, they were distraught, they're just starting out. And so we assisted them. We gave them some money to buy diapers because even though they couldn't get back into their house for 3-4 hours. So those are things that we try to do. We try to comfort them as much as we can. But it's my natural course of events, so you forget, other people may not know what you do, but, the town administrator was there with me, so, as the chief, because when I first come to the scene, he's saying, hey, we got to do, absolutely, and we did. We took care of him as best we could, and, unfortunately, they had a fire. There's nothing you could do. It was an accidental thing that happened, but they were taken care of, and no one was hurt, so.
Tom, being a retired firefighter, understands that end of it. We don't put out fires, so we let the fire department do their job, and we try to take care of everything else. Control the traffic around the fire, control the people around the fire. And really, if you ever witnessed a house fire, it's a devastating incident, especially when you see the family and the trauma that it causes them. So we do our best on the police end to just help them, calm them, get them whatever they need. Call Tom and say, Tom, we need sippy cups and whatever else we needed that day. And we just try to get it done because it's the worst moment the family's ever experienced in their life, and it's our job to get them through it. So choreography, fantastic word, because it's really what it is. Like Mr. Mayo said, gas and light show up, they shut off the electricity, they shut off the gas. If this was another town relying on another company to do that, it would probably be waiting hours. But in Wakefield, it happens, and it happens fast. Everybody works together.
Good teamwork. Team Wakefield, it really is.
That's great. Jonathan?
I just want to say absolutely excellent teamwork, and I think I can't believe I'm going to say this, almost 3 years of the pandemic has shown, though, the importance of having, someone to kind of be the glue that holds that team together. And I think, Tom, you've played that role exceptionally well, just in taking the amazing resources we have in the police department, the fire department, the gas and light department, DPW, the health department, and just making sure that we're all working from the same playbook and on the same page. I mean, having someone to kind of play that central role, I think we've seen is incredibly important. So thank you for the work that you do. We're very lucky to have you in the community.
Thank you.
I think everyone echoes that sentiment, and I personally thank you for coming to a night meeting in a suit. I know it wasn't your first choice, but I appreciate it, and I hope the town council supports both your departments and your work so much. It's been a long, 2.5 years, almost 3 years of this pandemic,
Right.
and I think I keep on saying that through pandemic we really had opportunities of actually being creative problem solvers, and doing some things differently that actually I'm really looking forward to reading your emergency plan, because there will not be another pandemic hopefully in our lifetimes, but there's going to be those situations, and seeing the teamwork and who responds and how we best serve our community are skills that we're just going to remember going in the future. So Thank you all for what you do, and Ed.
I'll just mention that, Tom. I still remember that day in March in Steve Mayo's office when we were sitting there, and then Ruth Clay had just come back from a meeting in Boston, and we were talking about COVID and what that was going to mean, and she said, "Oh, everyone's saying the worst case scenario is that the country would just shut down for 2 weeks, and then it'll all be over." And thinking about where we are today and all that you've done from that point forward, and I mean, at that point we were like, "Oh, there's no way that the country's not going to shut down for 2 weeks." Like that was like, seems to me such a foreign concept to us. So thinking about like where we were then and seeing all that you've done since that point, like thank you, because I mean you have done Herculean efforts on behalf of this community, and we all owe a tremendous debt of gratitude to you for it.
Well, I thank you, and I thank the help from the council as well, but I have to say, the gentleman that's sitting over here had some great ideas. I mean, we worked as a team, the chief, everybody got together. I mean, wasn't one person, this was a team of people that got this thing done. I mean, it was a lot of work, but we got by it, so I'm happy, and we did a good job, so thank you.
We're not going to do any audits of how many hours Tom has actually worked versus how many he's been paid, because...
Don't even ask.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Thank you both. I think we will let you leave. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Have a good night.
You too.
Great job, Tom.
Okay, moving on. Item 6B, the Historical Commission. Sherry, is Nancy on?
Yeah, Nancy's on. She should
Oh,
be
great.
turning your camera on any minute. Yeah. Yes, she is.
So just, Counselor Danahy had asked us to actually have an update about Historical Commission and the historical buildings and assets in Wakefield. And so we invited Nancy from the Historical Commission, and welcome, Nancy.
Thank you. Thank you.
And the floor is yours.
Oh my goodness. Well, I was invited to come and talk about the Wakefield's historic buildings and some of the preservation needs. We have a lot of historic buildings in Wakefield, as you probably all know. In the 1980s, we commissioned a survey to go through and come up with a list of the historic buildings, and I don't know if you can, here it is. This massive tome is entitled The Cultural Resources of Wakefield, and it basically encompasses 350 individual structures. Of those, 159 buildings and other structures were put on the National Register of Historic Places. So we were and are definitely rich in historic structures. Many of them belong to the town of Wakefield, including the town hall, the library, the Lincoln Schoolhouse, the Warren School, the Hurd School, the Greenwood School, the AmeriCal Civic Center, and the Albion Cultural Center, also known as the old Wakefield Post Office, among others. But I'd like to bring out several issues about some of the other areas to your attention tonight with regard to preservation needs. First of all, and you might not think of it as a building, but it is a very, very, very significant site in Wakefield, and that's the old burying ground. There are over 1,000 monuments in the old burying ground, and it really is no less than an outdoor museum featuring Puritan stone sculpture, which sounds maybe a little forbidding, but actually there are monuments there that the Smithsonian has had an interest in. We have some of the oldest Puritan gravestone art in the local area, or in the area at all. Because of that, we would really like to see a little more security in the area. Other towns have actively fenced off with metal fences their old burying grounds, and that's definitely not what we want for Wakefield. We want the outdoor park feeling. And some of the little wooden fencing that will be included in the work to be done along the floral way will be a great help, I think, in adding a little bit more security. But we have noticed more and more gravestones being missing over the years. And it would be wonderful if we could have some kind of cameras present and visible for people to see when they're visiting the areas. They maybe might be a little bit more mindful of not taking any souvenirs home with them. Because one of the things about old burying grounds is that the stones sometimes come up from the ground and are easily taken away. In the fullness of time, it would be great if the Historical Commission could commission a preservation plan for the old burying ground. Because while many of the gravestones are in great conditions, many are not. And it would be a wonderful resource for us to catalog all the work that has been done in the past and map out restoration efforts for the future. So that's one of our sites that I wanted to bring to your attention. The second is the Soldiers and Sailors Monument, otherwise known as the Civil War Monument on the Upper Common, or the Veterans Upper Common. It was actually built in 1902, donated by Harriet Flint. The Civil War Monument is structurally sound. However, if you look at it closely, you will notice that many of the figures on it are missing fingers or arms. This is something that does happen over time. And several years ago, another group came to us wanting to partner with us in order to raise funds for restoration. And at that time, an assessment was done, and it would cost $100,000 to undertake that work. So if there's $100,000 laying around, that might be one use for it. But we didn't proceed with it at that time, because at that time a big fundraising campaign was going on for the World War II monument. So it didn't seem like a seemly time to progress with that. So now the third area that I'd like to talk about is, of course, the bandstand. Now, we've all noticed, it's come to our attention, that the bandstand is in kind of tough shape. Built in 1885. We know that work needs to be done on it, a significant amount of work. It would be our recommendation that a historic structure report be done on the structure in order to guide the restoration work. We have very talented architects who are volunteering their time, along with our very talented board of Department of Public Works. But such a document, a historic structure report, would really be helpful. I don't know, I'm not an engineer, I don't know about the structural soundness of the bandstand, but in looking at it and thinking about it, it is possible that it is built on top of graves. I don't know if you are cognizant of that fact, because the first burying ground in what is now Wakefield was actually right about where the bandstand is. So, and that's also on the wish list for the Historical Commission, to put up a nice, tasteful monument to those probably 200 people that are buried there. So the bandstand is definitely an area that does need help right at this time. Now, the Hartshorn House.
Nancy, we can't hear you. You might have hit mute by accident.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I was talking about the Hartshorn House. We're very pleased with the new roof. But there are, unfortunately, some drainage issues in the back of the house. that are causing a deterioration of some stone steps. No one is going up or down those steps. We've moved a big flower pot so that no one can go that way. But it's also eroding kind of some of the foundation of the house, and that is one of the oldest parts of the house. So it would be great if the DPW could maybe take a look at that and see if there's something that could be done. Also with the Hartshorn house, the furnace in the house is 19 years old, and maybe the DPW could take a look at that as well. And the fifth and last building I'd like to talk about is the West Ward School, built in 1847. The school last received a roof around 1990, and it needs a new roof. It's not a complicated roof, it's just a simple one. It also needs a new fire panel inside the building that is maintained by the fire department. And that's about it. Does anybody have any questions?
Well, thank you, Nancy, for going through that list. I've been to everywhere except I've never been to the school. So I need to come by one day and get a tour of that school.
Oh, you definitely do. It's a museum.
Yep.
And we have open hours. It's posted on the website wakefieldhistory.org.
Any questions for Nancy?
I just have a quick question. Nancy, I was opening my mail yesterday. I got my Wakefield Historical Society membership page, and so, or request. So I know we have, just structurally, you're a committee here in town, and then there are private funds as well. Could you just explain a little bit kind of how that works?
Well, there are a number of groups and organizations in town that
Okay.
do various things. The Hartshorn House Association, the Historical Society maintains the museum.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the Wakefield Historical Society is for that the West Ward School.
For the inside the school,
Right.
And what goes on inside, yeah.
And the town still owns that building, however.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And it still owns the Hartshorn House, yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Great. I just wanted clarification on that. Thank you for everything that you're doing. It's tremendously important.
Thank you.
Anne?
Yes, I have a question actually for town administrator. What is our process of maintaining the properties? Like when we identify that there's an issue or?
Well, they usually go through the capital planning process. So we
Okay.
look at all the properties. I had not heard about the drainage issue on the Hartshorn House, so we'll have them take a look at that. They are looking at the bandstand right now.
Okay.
I know Joe's been meeting with some local architects and making sure that, and some historical people to make sure that can be done. I do believe the roof for Little Red, some of us will call it Little Red, that have been around for a while, that is on our list to look at, so we'll have them look at that as well. But that's how it is. DPW looks at every property in town, every town-owned property.
Yeah.
As they all are. Hartshorn House, we just spent, it was a capital expenditure the last couple of years, and
Yeah.
that was a complicated roof.
Yeah, I know.
Like
It was
Nancy
expensive,
said,
right?
to keep it in the, I think it's wooden, if I'm not mistaken, Nancy, wooden shingles
Yep.
on the Hartshorn
Yeah,
House.
wooden shingles, yeah.
And that came out great.
Yeah.
It really came out great, and takes a special person to do it, and takes a little bit while longer. So, yeah, I'll make sure all of these are on our list. And I will say that the Soldiers and Sailors Monument, we might talk a little bit about later at item 13 or something. I think it's in there. Item 12. Yeah, but that's how it is. It goes with the DPW capital process.
Okay. It's really helpful, though. It's really, well, I just had a history lesson, so thank you. So I just learned a lot, too. But I think it is helpful to have this update on an annual basis, just so that we're kind of aware. So thank you, Nancy.
Thank you.
Mike?
Nancy, you mentioned, I believe it was a historical study regarding the bandstand. Is that kind of something that would be outside of what Steve was talking about for capital planning or the DPW work? Is that something more specific and special?
I think it might, It might coincide with the efforts that are going on right now. A historic structure report would be something that would be done in concert with the restoration efforts for the bandstand, so that so it would be done at the same time.
Yeah, Old Mohawk Historic Preservation is giving us a report on that.
That would be
Working
Old
with-
Mohawk.
Old Mohawk, yeah, working with WCNA and DPW. So
Okay,
that's in
thanks.
the works.
Thanks, Nancy,
Yeah.
thanks, Steve.
Bob?
I'm off mute, right?
Yes.
Nancy, thank you for the presentation. I just had a couple of quick questions for you. I've heard estimates in the past of upwards of $250,000 for repairing the Soldiers and Sailors Monument, Civil War Monument. You mentioned that in the past there was an assessment of maybe $100,000 to do repairs. Do you know what those repairs, was that just to fix the limbs, or was that to do some other repairs as well?
It was primarily to do the limbs,
Okay.
and that was a while ago.
It was a number of years ago. Okay, and when Marriott Flint bequeathed this to us in 1902, do you know if the town has ever had to spend any money since then to upkeep that monument?
I actually don't know that. I don't think so. I think that the fencing around it was installed, but I don't know about specifically whether any money was spent on the monument by the town,
All right, thank you.
only by Harriet.
Thanks.
Well, Nancy, thank you so much. This was super helpful. I think you gave us a lot of good ideas, and you gave DPW and Steve a good list of action items to work on. One thing I do want to add, Steve, is I think these are such great examples. Well, every year when you ask about earmarks in the state budget, but then also, I'm guessing Historical Commission statewide gives out a lot of grants. There's probably grant money for a lot of this, so as much as Jen and Erin and your team can kind of be on the lookout and work with Nancy and the commission, I think that there's got to be money out there for some of these projects, which we've gotten, like the roof, like we've gotten it before. So just a reminder to kind of always be looking for these
Absolutely.
projects. Great. Well, thank you very much, Nancy.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and moving on, item 6, our last update in the update section is about our Wakefield Memorial High School. I think there's a few people joining us by Zoom.
Yeah, they should be coming over. Joe Bertrand is on screen now. Doug Lyons.
Joe, did Nancy just hand you the laptop?
Oh, no. We have separate studios here.
You don't care.
We have so many Zoom meetings that we have to, create a whole area of the house.
You've got like WCAT,
Yes.
version 2.0 over there. That's great.
This is a West Side version.
Yeah. That's great. Hi, Superintendent Lyons.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for making time. Are there other people that we should be letting in, or
Yes,
okay?
yeah, Lynn Stapleton.
They're coming.
Okay, great.
Helen Santini.
Yep, they're coming.
Okay.
Gas and
I
light,
think
we are
they're
getting
out.
to you. But
Yeah,
this needed to
yeah.
go before you guys went, so we will get there shortly.
Yep, you should be all set now.
Oh,
All right,
great.
thank you.
Take it away, Joe.
Thank you very much. I know some of you attended the community forum, the 8th community forum on the new high school last night. Tonight, we thought we'd give you a shortened version of it to take you an idea, look at some of the new design developments that have occurred, and also talk about the reimbursable rate from the share from the MSBA very briefly as well. However, I know that there has been out in the domain talk about a certain number of the cost. That estimate was done in April, and it was done at that time for that design and that aspect of it. We are literally in the days away from getting 3 different estimates from 3 different companies, and then reconciling them to come up with a new figure for the entire project. So that is something we will be showing next week. But to begin with, I'd like to have SMMA give you a very brief overview of the design developments that have occurred. Helen Fantini, if you take it away.
So I'm going to hand it directly back to Lynn because we switched it up on you, Joe. So
now
Lynn
you.
will. So Lynn will speak first about the overall schedule and cost.
Sounds great. All right, Lynn.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Lynn Stapleton from Left Field, and I have Tim Baker here joining me from Left Field as well. Next, please, slide. We're going to go through a quick project update tonight, give you a little bit of information on where we are in the feasibility study and schematic design schedule. Also, talk a little bit about MSBA's reimbursement, as well as where we are with cost estimating, and Helen will go through where we are with the site design and building design, both interior and exterior as well, and then we'll talk again about what the next steps for the project are. Next slide, please. We are nearing the end of the feasibility study and schematic design phase of the project. This is phase 1. This has been going on for about 13 months, and we are looking to make a submission to MSBA by October 27th in anticipation of an MSBA board vote to approve the project scope and budget on December 21st of 2022. And following that by a town meeting approval vote in January of 2023. We do have to make a project budget submission to MSBA on October 13th, and as Joe said, we're working hard toward getting the construction costs set, and we'll be entering that into our overall project budget and be coming back to the PBC next week on the 6th to review where we are with the budget. Next slide, please. There's been a lot of talk about MSBA's reimbursement rate, and as you all know, Wakefield has a 49.94% reimbursement rate. We're looking to gain a few more incentive percentages. 1.5% for good maintenance and 2% for energy efficiency, over 20% over the energy code. This would bring us to the 53.44%. And what you see down here below, I'm going to explain it in the next couple of slides. Even though we anticipate a 53.44% reimbursement rate, we don't expect to get more than 26.16%. And I'll explain that on the next slide. MSBA has a series of caps, and the key thing, and you'll hear a lot about, is MSBA's reimbursement is only on eligible costs. So it's we have a site cap of 8% of building costs. Anything over 8% of the building costs in terms of site expenditures will be 100% on the town and ineligible for reimbursement. Also, there's also completely ineligible site costs, and that's any off-site work such as the Hemlock Road realignment or the intersection work there. We also have a construction cap of $360 per square foot of eligible space, and again, 8% of the building cost is eligible. Anything over 8% is ineligible. And all ineligible spaces are 100% on the town. The soft costs are fees, they're fit outs, FF&E, technology, Also, any other building costs in order to push the project forward are capped at 20% of construction costs. The designer has a fee cap as well, 10% of $500 a square foot, and the OPM has a fee cap of 3.5% of $500 a square foot. The FF&E, which is furniture, fixtures, and equipment, has a cap of $1,200 per student, and technology has a cap of $1,200 per student. And then MSBA has a long list of categorically ineligible costs, and that has to do with any moving or mailing or swing space cost, any contingency usage over 1%, gyms over 18,000 square feet, excess physical education spaces over the MSBA guidelines, non-academic spaces that aren't listed on the MSBA space guidelines, and then excess in theater and performing arts spaces, as well as town-specific spaces. When we start the educational program, MSBA has a space summary guideline. It is a minimum space guideline, and this is what they will participate to try to spread the money throughout the districts of the Commonwealth. And these minimum space guidelines, I will say that I've never seen a school built to the minimum space guidelines, but it is spaces that all schools do have. But each school develops their space summary needs based on the educational program that is developed during the preliminary design program phase. MSBA's minimum space guidelines for high schools are 195,000 square feet based on 1,000 student design enrollment. We also have, they evaluate any spaces over that, and if they are academic in nature, they will most likely allow them to be reimbursed. And we think that we will get about 28,403 square feet of academic exceptions. We do know that we have ineligible space of 35,624 square feet that MSB definitely will not reimburse for. And those totals get us to the current total square footage of the building, which is 260,027 square feet to date. Next slide. Oh, went out of order. Next slide. Keep going. Because we know that these are the spaces listed here are ineligible costs, we have asked all of our estimators to break them out just so that we know what the cost of these spaces are. But these spaces are all spaces unique and needed by the high school. They all exist currently in the existing high school, and they all have programs in them. So we did take a real close look at all the spaces needed, and took an extra look at these spaces, but we wanted to be able to provide the high school with at least the same program spaces that they currently have. So when we give our presentation on costs, we'll be able to see what all of these ineligible spaces cost. Next slide. I'll quickly go ahead and give you a quick overview of where we hope to be with the schedule if MSBA approves the project scope and budget, and the town does as well. We hope to start design, development, and construction documents early in 2023, completing in the spring of 2024. We're looking to start enabling site work in the summer of 2023. We brought a construction manager on very early. They're one of the 3 estimators that we have estimating the project right now, and their bond building company that it's going to be the contractor for the new school. And they will be on with us throughout the design process, helping with logistical planning and constructability as the design develops. We also think that it'll be very beneficial in terms of informing them. They'll be very familiar with the school prior to construction. We hope to have a couple of early bid packages, with the main bid package being in spring, summer of 2024, with the new building being complete by the summer of 2026. The kids moving out of the existing high school into the new building, and then demolition of the existing building and fills would begin thereafter, and completing the entire project by summer of 2027. I'll turn it over to Helen to give you an update on the design.
Great. Good evening, everyone. Happy to be with you to share an update from the design team's perspective on this important and exciting project. I think as Lynn had mentioned, this is called Schematic Design. So here is a disclaimer. There's much detail that remains to be worked through in the coming months in order to create a complete set of instructions to build this building. So for those of you less familiar with the plans for the new high school, the site plan is a good way to ground you. It does illustrate the selected option, selected from a range of, I think we had 11 options, much earlier in the process that were studied. But the winning scheme is this one, building a new building on the existing Beasley Oval, which will be reconstructed once the new building is complete and the existing building is abated and demolished. So some things to note on this site plan. The ultimate goal is a safe and pedestrian-friendly campus. You'll see on this plan the realignment, a proposed realignment of Hemlock Road with Nahant, with potential roundabout at the intersection to help also contribute to safety and lessen congestion. Parking is often something that gets asked in community forums. So we have increased parking modestly, both on the site proper as well as a plan to increase spaces in the lot that is associated with Landrigan Field. So we're looking at approximately 18% more parking spaces. And in addition to the new Beasley Oval, many opportunities are on site to create outdoor learning and social spaces. And some of those spaces are labeled as commons in the plan. And we'll zoom in on one of those in just a second. You can go to the next slide, please. So we have a few 3D versions to share with you. So this is sort of hovering, truly a bird's eye view from above Beasley, looking towards the main entry, where a connecting plaza is envisioned to bridge over that driveway that does, to the right, connect to Farm Street. And the next slide. And this is another view closer to eye level, again, from the same vantage point, looking over that plaza towards the main entry to, again, get the site safely connected between the building itself as well as Beasley Oval. And the next slide. And then to the, and I should have mentioned, the north is to the right on the plans. So now we are to the east side of the building, looking at what we're calling the Central Commons. And this is a space that's created between the wings that opens directly from the dining commons. And then to the right, we'll have the ability to engage with art classrooms through big doors. And again, we're trying to use the site and activate it as much as possible. The next slide. So before I walk through the plans with you, this is a really helpful slide to sort of illustrate, how we've gotten to our place that we are right now. Throughout this process, we've engaged with district administration, teachers, town officials, and the many volunteers who serve on our focus groups, and of course, the PBC SBC. We hosted virtual educational visioning sessions actually about a year ago. So again, we're deep into the process with a ways to go. But this helps to define, helps to illustrate the goals, this slide. Through these conversations, we were able to set priorities for the design. This diagram is helpful because when I flip to the next slides, it'll help you read the floor plans. And essentially what we've arrived at here in correspondence with working on the site is 4 academic clusters positioned in relation to one another, and the site to the north or to the right here, health and wellness and athletics, fine and performing arts, and then towards the south end of the site, illustrated by the petals, the 2 academic wings. All of these are bound together by a heart of the school, which we're calling the dining commons and community space that will be connected directly to the main entrance, supervised by the administration spaces. Next slide. So I will not go into as much detail as we have been in previous community forums, but we will certainly post the plans on the website. Schematic design is plan heavy. So what we're trying to do at this moment is to confirm sizes of spaces and get them located optimally in relation to one another. So just briefly, the purple spaces are those performing arts spaces that include the auditorium and music classrooms. To the right of the central commons, and then to the left, the purple spaces are those art classrooms, which are part of those 2 academic wings. The peach space that's towards top of the plan are the administration spaces. And then to the right, blue spaces indicate health and wellness and fitness. And the gray spaces over to the right or north of the plan are the district offices and WCAT studio. Can I have the next slide, please? And then moving upstairs, again, the blue is athletics. You can start to read the plan more easily with the striping of the courts. The academic clusters, once again, to the left. And the media center or library is becoming a really important piece to the image of the building and the life of that central cluster. It's the dark orange space that bridges over the main entry and looks over onto those dining commons below. And next slide. And then finally, the third story, really just, we're just looking at classroom spaces once we get up to the top. And next. And then just a few more images for you. Aerial view from the northwest, looking towards the school. And next. And then a view from Farm Street, which we've certainly had a lot of requests to understand, what the experience or view from Farm Street would be. So here is an early version. And next. And then zooming in and focusing on that main building entry, and that corrugated or sawtooth aspect that is the library space or media center space is really an important feature of the school. And next. And then we did want to just mention, we are looking at robust materials that work well with what is in Wakefield right now: red brick, some limited use of metal panel, of course glass, some granite detailing, and precast concrete. And next. And then some views inside. So this is a view from right when you'd come in the main entry, looking up towards that learning stair. This is where that dining commons, heart of the school is. And next. And then looking down from a top, once you get to the landing from that learning stair and looking back towards the main entry. And next. And then a view in the media center itself, looking out towards Farm Street, out the front of the building. And one more. And then from looking in from that window into that media center space. Thanks. Next. turn it back to Lynn to talk about some key dates.
So as we've said, we're in the cost estimating process, scheduled to wrap up by Friday. And we will have a cost reconciliation meeting with the 3 estimating teams, as well as the architects, the engineers, and the construction manager team. I just wanted to let you know that we did have a consultation with the Massachusetts Office of Campaign and Political Finance. They held a special meeting for the PBC on September 22nd, and they gave us a lot of great advice on what town officials and agents of the town or appointed officials of the town can and can't do in regards to advocating for the project. It basically summed up by saying that we can provide facts on the project, but we cannot advocate for a yes or no vote. We did have our public forum last night. The recording of that will be posted on the project's website, as well as the slide presentation if you'd like to take a look at it. It's much like tonight's presentation, but maybe a little bit more in depth. We do have a couple of programming meetings still to accomplish this week, which tomorrow. And once we complete our cost reconciliation, we'll enter the construction costs into our overall total project budget, and we will be presenting that to the PBC on October 6th. So we invite you all to attend that meeting as well. The project team intends to present where we are with design. We'll have presentation boards available, and we'll be there for Wakefield Town Day on October 8th. I mentioned earlier that we will be submitting a budget notification to MSBA on the 13th of October, as well as presenting a schematic design submission draft to the PBC for review prior to asking them to vote on submitting the schematic design. We intend to have another public forum on October 18th to present the costs to the public and receive feedback. And we just recently, this says September 30th, but we just recently received notification from the Traffic Advisory Committee that will be on their October 21st agenda. So all of this is in anticipation of submitting the schematic design to MSBA on October 27th.
Thank you, Lynn.
Concludes our
Thank you, Helen.
presentation for tonight.
Thank you. Joe, Doug, anyone else want to add anything?
I think I'd just like to add, we're super pleased with the architects in our project management group and really kind of the detail and support that they've provided both the administration and teacher leaders to create the educational plan that has led to the design that you are seeing tonight. So it's really been a remarkable team effort, and we appreciate the support and expertise of this group. I mean, they're pretty talented.
Okay, before I take questions, I do want to say, Lynn, thank you for talking about the Office of Campaign Finance and what they said. We are really lucky in Wakefield to have our own Tom Mullen, who will talk to our council about what we can and can't do about this. But I will, let's take questions for people first. And I saw Ed and then Jonathan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for this presentation. It's incredibly helpful. I realize that the biggest question of anyone that's watching this tonight is cost. And I understand that those estimates are still, it sounds like a few days off. But can you give at least kind of like a ballpark sense of where we're looking? Because I know a lot of people are going to be, obviously interested in knowing what that number looks like.
The last time we had a cost estimating exercise was back in April, and it was based on a very conceptual idea of our preferred schematic, which we have continued to develop over the last 3 or 4 months. So, I mean, love to stay within that cost range that was presented. We did a forum on cost back, I believe, on April 27th. So that, again, that whole presentation with all the slides is available on our project website to take a look at. We'd like to stay in that range, but a lot has happened as we've developed the project, as well as at the time we were projecting 7 to 9% of inflation for 2022, with normalizing inflation for 2023 back to 4 to 5%. And what we're seeing now is inflation for 2022 is hitting 15%, and all the current construction indexes out there indicate that that 15% will carry over to 2023. So some of those adjustments we'll have to make, but in terms of, you know, we're trying to stick as close to the cost that we presented in April as we can.
I would just like to say, Ed, that I doubt that we're going to be. I think it will be above that figure. Also, it was construction cost only. We do not have at that time the Hemlock Road realignment, the rotary, the roundabout there. So I would anticipate that it's going to be higher than that number, but I certainly would not estimate what it's going to be. We're going to have to just wait and see till next week.
Yeah. I'll just add that I was watching Stoneham, that's currently going through this with they're in process with their construction of their high school, and I know that their estimates, they found that actuals like through 9 months of the year were actually even higher than what they had anticipated, just because of construction costs and and inflation obviously and the supply chain issues. So they were having to make some tough choices. So I was just trying to get a sense of where we're landing, because I know, Joe, things like the Hemlock Road and the Rotary and things of that nature are outside of MSBA. That's 100% on the town, I think, right? Those are the exclusions. So, all right. So it sounds like we have to all kind of wait a few more days to better understand where we land on this.
Yeah, if scheduled it 2 weeks from now, we would have had that.
Got it. Thank you.
Although, just to reiterate what was said earlier, so there will be a public forum on the cost on October 18th.
Right.
So you don't need to come back to us, but people should go to that forum on October 14th. I mean 18th,
Absolutely.
excuse me, 18th. Jonathan?
Thank you. Well, first of all, Lynn and Helen, thank you so much for going through the presentation. And, I just want to say, as someone who sits on the school building committee and has participated in a lot of the focus groups and, been involved in some of these discussions, it is amazing the progress that we've made in the design, from concept to going through, as Helen mentioned, 11 different options, to see the design and to see the building take shape in such a tangible way now is really exciting. And I think what we're seeing as part of that process, just the opportunity that this is going to give us as a town. And really, I think, unfortunately, highlights some of the deficiencies with the current school that we have and that we're hoping to replace. So appreciate all the team's work that's gone into it, all the tough questions that we've raised in the PBC, SBC meetings and in the focus groups, and just the creativity and the thought that's gone into the process so far. I did want to talk a little bit about the MSBA funding issue, just because I sit on the Mass Municipal Association's Fiscal Policy Commission, and we actually had a lengthy conversation about this issue in our monthly meeting yesterday. So as Lynn mentioned, one of the kind of nuances in the formula is there's a construction cost cap of $360 a square foot that the MSBA applies. And they actually apply that before they figure out your split. So that roughly 50-50 kind of gross reimbursement split gets calculated on the basis of $360 per square foot. The issue is, as we've talked about with inflation, construction costs are running quite a bit higher than that. And we're seeing this in Wakefield with this project. We're seeing it with the Voc project, Stoneham seeing it with their high school, and it's really something that folks are seeing across the state as well, which is why this came up
in the MMA discussion yesterday. So from the MMA team, I think there's a recognition that addressing this issue is both sort of a short-term and a long-term legislative priority for the Mass Municipal Association. Longer-term discussions around sort of reforming the formula overall, and maybe some process improvements with the MSBA too. I think our team can probably speak to some of the deficiencies in the process with the MSBA that we may want to see addressed. But also over the shorter term, figuring out how we at least pump some money into the MSBA to address this funding shortfall. I think the MMA team was, I think, more optimistic that there might be some opportunity in the informal legislative session that the state's in right now, at least until the Chapter 62F tax rebates came into being, which has kind of put a lot of the momentum around the economic development bills pending in front of the legislature and other issues, kind of put a lot of those on ice. With that being said, I think they're hopeful that we'll be able to start pushing this again in the next legislative session that'll start in January. Both because we'll be back into formal session, there'll be some more opportunity to have some creative discussions, but also thinking about if the Fair Share Amendment Question 1 on the ballot passes and there's additional revenue coming into the state, how does that affect the opportunities to address the funding issue? So I think, seeing that sort of gross reimbursement rate at 50% kind of, sort of needled down to 26 is a hard number to contemplate. And I think, obviously we all as town leaders understand that, and we'll have to think about that as we go over, kind of these funding discussions over the next couple of months. But I wanted to share that update because I don't think we're the only ones in this boat. It's an issue really for any community facing a new school project, particularly lower income communities, and gateway communities across the state. So hopefully, through our work with MMA, we'll be able to make some improvements there.
Thank you for that. Anyone else? Bob?
Yeah, thank you. Lynn, is that your name? I believe Lynn made the presentation. I thought your slides were very good, but you made a couple of comments that I think you might want to consider inserting into your slides because I found them extremely relevant. I don't remember what page it was on, but you said that no school in Massachusetts is built within that MSBA minimum square feet. And I think that was pretty relevant to show that this is what MSBA will reimburse, but there's no school that's built just for that size. I think the other thing you said that was very relevant was the new school is the same size as the current high school. I think that's what you said. And I heard in the meeting the other night, the presentation, that the new school would be able to accommodate 1,000 students, but it could be expanded to up to 1,150 students. Is that accurate?
We have to plan for 15% growth, but the design enrollment is 1,000. And in regards to what I said about the square footage of the building isn't exactly like the existing building, but we provided at minimum the square footage that certain certain programs currently occupy, such as the health and physical education programs, as well as the theater and performing arts.
Okay. And then I also think it's relevant that, WCAT, the studio, is part of this too, because that's something that's also being covered with this MSBA project. So the town doesn't have to go and separately build its own studio. This is part of the high school construction. And the other two things that came up recently that I thought were relevant was an organization called Niche just ranked our high school, 138th high school in Massachusetts out of 219, and gave the facilities a rating of a C-. I think that's relevant as well. And then down the road, as we get further to the vote in January, it's going to be important to educate the citizens and residents of Wakefield of what the adverse effects are if there's a failed vote. And it says right in the MSBA website that a failed vote in all likelihood means that the district goes back to having to submit a statement of interest and get back in line. And so I think as we go down the road, we're going to have to call all this kind of information so we can provide it to the residents so they understand the ramifications of the important vote they're going to take both at town meeting in November and the vote in January. Thank you.
Just one clarification. The WCAT studio is being paid not with any MSBA money, but it's being paid. That's one of the exempted areas where the town is covering it 100%.
Okay, thanks.
No problem.
And I will say, just to give you a timeline of when you first started submitting statements of interest to get into the MSBA program until where you are today, I recall back when the Galvin Middle School was being designed and constructed, they started submitting statements of interest to MSBA to get the high school in the program back then. So that's been at least 7+ years ago when they started trying to get the high school project in the MSBA pipeline. So you'd have to start back from the beginning.
It is not a short process by any means. Any other questions or comments? I do want to thank all the consultants and engineers. You have done great work. I was on the call yesterday. I'm hoping we can get these slides today, actually, Steve, on our website, because I do think they were a good overview. And then I do just want to thank Joe and Doug, you and your teams, whether volunteers or Doug, your staff, just, doing this on top of everything else is very appreciated. So thank you. And this is, again, the start of many conversations that we will have before a January vote. So thank you very much for coming and sharing with the town council.
Of course, thank you.
You can leave. I don't think you need to stay. You can stay, but you are also welcome to leave. And then, Tom, can I ask you to let us know what we can and maybe talk a little bit about what the timeline looks like, just to clarify for people watching from home?
The timeline?
A town meeting and then the election.
Oh, so we're going to have this will be on the upcoming town meeting.
This will be a special town meeting probably in January, because we won't know whether this has been approved by the SBA until December 21st at the earliest. So probably we'll have a special town meeting, and then assuming that the process passes at town meeting, which I'm assuming it will, then we will have to set a special election. I think that the town clerk needs a minimum of 35 days, if I'm not mistaken. So that would be the next step to that. So that may fall in, beginning of March sort of time frame. She could do it quicker, but I think that's what the statute says.
So let me address what we can and can't do by way of advocacy. The easiest rule to remember is thou shalt not spend public money to influence an election. Strangely, that rule does not apply to town meetings. We can spend town funds to influence the outcome of town meeting votes. We have to be extremely careful not to mention anything about an election if we do that. And I'm not necessarily suggesting that we do so. But the law governing elections, including ballot questions, is much more stringent. Now, I'm using shorthand when I say money, because what I really mean is government resources, which would include anything paid for by taxpayers or ratepayers. The same rule applies to the MGLD, such as paper, personnel, meeting rooms, copiers, computers, phones, cars, bulk mailing permits. Now, you may wonder, what about neutral information, such as the Red Book that we all get from the Secretary of State about the referenda questions? Well, the Secretary of State is allowed to send out that neutral information only because there's a statute that specifically permits it. There is a cognate statute for municipalities but it would have to be adopted by town meeting before we could apply it. And it would only permit the town to solicit brief statements from groups for and against the question. And when I say brief, I mean really brief, 150 words each. So I don't necessarily think it's going to shed a lot of light. The rule against using town resources concerning an election applies also to things like flyers that the school department might want to prepare and ask teachers to distribute to students. I don't know if they're tempted, don't do it. The town resources are used in the form of the printing and the distribution by teachers because their time is a public expense. And the same would be true with respect to stuffing even informational material into MGLD bills. So who can spend money on a ballot contest? Well, the right way to go about it is to organize a ballot question committee. And existing private organizations can also be used. I don't want to get too far into that because some nonprofits could actually lose their tax-exempt status if they get into the business of lobbying. Now, money and speech are at some level interchangeable. So you may wonder, if you as a public official can't use public funds, does that mean you can't speak out? And the answer is that it depends on what kind of public official you are. If you are a policy-making official, you may always speak or act concerning ballot questions in your official capacity, and even during working hours, because you're acting within that official capacity. For example, the superintendent of schools, the permanent building committee, your town administrator may certainly prepare reports supporting or opposing a proposal to build a new high school. Shame on them if they didn't. It's their job. And those reports are public records. We couldn't keep them away from the public if we wanted to. So, of course, they can make such material available to the public, but they must stop short of using public funds to circulate it or to promote it. Thus, the report can be given to the press or posted on the town website or put up on a bulletin board or mailed to people who ask for it. And those people themselves who ask for it and get it, they can do whatever they want with it. So they can publish it in the newspaper if they want. But a public official can't use public funds to mail out those works of advocacy, or to use public email to people who have not asked for the information. Now, for you, as elected officials who are not paid and don't have working hours, I wouldn't be worried at all about what you say. Go ahead and say anything to anyone, anytime. Just don't use town resources to do so. If you send an email, please do it on your own personal email, not your town account. If you want to mail a flyer, please buy the stamp, buy the envelope, do the copying yourself, or better yet, give your money to a ballot question committee. You always have that right to do that. And as for non-policy making public employees, such as teachers, well, they remain U.S. citizens. So on their own time, they can say whatever they like, but they may not campaign on the town's time. Okay? There is no problem holding public meetings where policymakers such as you and the school committee and the superintendent and the town administrator explain the project and even support the ballot question. There's no problem with any of you going on cable TV and saying what you want. The town can allow the use of space in town buildings by groups that support or oppose the ballot question. The key is to give them equal access. Okay? And that doesn't mean that if we have a pro group doing a program on Tuesday, that an anti-group has a right to get in the same day. It means that they can get in on Wednesday or Thursday or some other equivalent period of time. Now, one caveat. There can be no fundraising in any public building, period. And no paid public employee can do fundraising for or against the ballot question. You guys aren't paid. Congratulations.
Are you sure about that? Or
Keep rubbing that in.
Like say that again, right?
Okay. So you can do that. You can raise funds, though not in a public building. Steve and I get some money from the town, so we can't. Okay. Now, the State Ethics Commission also enforces a statute, quite apart from all this campaign and political finance stuff, that forbids municipal employees, and all of us, including you unpaid people, are municipal employees in their eyes, from receiving an unwarranted privilege of substantial value not available to others. And what they construe that to mean is, so public municipal employees like us can't use things such as official letterhead of the town on campaign materials. We can't use the town seal on campaign materials. And appointed officials who don't have policy-making positions can't use their public title while campaigning for a ballot question. So, for example, a DPW employee couldn't make a ballot question video where he identifies himself by his title. And a firefighter couldn't even wear his uniform in such a video. But the rules are much more lenient for elected officials like you and policy-making officials like the superintendent and Steve. You guys can use your titles because, again, it's your job. And elected boards may endorse or oppose ballot questions. As you can see from all of this, it's hideously complex. My suggestion is, before you do anything, please give me a call. Okay? Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone have further questions? That was great. That was really helpful. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, that was super helpful. So could we, as a board, as a town council, take a vote in support or opposition to the construction of a new high school in a meeting?
Yes, you
Okay.
could. Let me just point out, the State Ethics Commission says you can do that with a ballot question. You can't do it with an election. And so you
Right.
couldn't, I mean, not that you'd be tempted to anyway, but you can't take a vote to support this or that candidate for political office.
But we could for the high school
But you could for a
project.
ballot question.
Okay. And a paid town employee who's in a policymaking position could appear in an advertisement for promotion or opposition to the building of a new high school? Or?
Yeah, if it's within his or her jurisdiction.
Okay.
So again, the superintendent, the town administrator, shame on them if they don't take a position. So of course they're going to take a position and they're going to advocate, and they can do that in any medium.
Okay.
But they can't spend public funds to do
Right, right. Good. Thank you. That's helpful.
it. Sure.
Mike?
Tom, just to follow up, it seems like, if something appears on a town website, there's an underlying cost that's being borne by the town. But that's okay.
I know there's that de minimis cost, but for what it's worth, the Office of Campaign and Political Finance says that's okay. That's right. That's more a matter of like maintaining a public record in a place where people can get at it. And they do draw the distinction between maintaining it either in the town clerk's office or on a bulletin board or on a website on the one hand, and sending it to somebody who hasn't requested it on the other. That's a no-no, no matter how you do it, by mail, email, whatever.
Right, someone would have to go seek it out or look for it.
Yeah.
As opposed to pushing it out.
Or they could ask for it.
Right.
Yeah.
Bob, did you have any questions? Okay, just checking. Okay, well, that was super helpful, and takeaway is town council does not get paid to do this job. And if anyone has any questions or concerns, and Superintendent Lyons, I'm hoping you pass this on to your school committee, that they should contact Tom if there's any questions or concerns.
I think the other key takeaway is don't use your town email.
Yeah, I mean,
to advocate,
yes.
okay? That's a really big one.
Yes,
Unless,
that.
can I just clarify that? I mean, what if somebody sends us a message saying, what do you think about this? That happens to us all the time.
I believe if you're answering that person's question, you can.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, as long as it's in response to a question, okay.
You know, that's analogous to somebody writes to you and says, hey, I understand there's this interesting report. Can you send it to me?
Then you can send it
You
to
can do that.
Okay.
You can't send out that report to 5,000 people.
Exactly, got it.
Well, thank you very much. Moving right along, item 7, and thank you for people in studio. Wakefield Municipal Gas and Light Department is here to talk to us about the proposed energy park easement to serve the Northeast Metro Tech and Wakefield Memorial High School. And I will tell you that one of my colleagues skipped a musical to be here for this presentation. So very excited to hear all about this energy
I
park.
had Tina Turner tickets to
Oh.
potentially. This is really important.
Well, thank you. And it's timely to follow the high school presentation. I think I'm Pete Dyan from the Gas and Light Department, Jed Calais and Mike McCarthy. We're here tonight to talk about the proposed energy park, which would ultimately end up serving both the new high school and the new Metro Tech. Taking a step back, as a goal, we obviously want these very large, very expensive new buildings to be environmentally, conscious and looking forward to our goals of net zero in 2050. So with that in mind, we really, the Metro Tech was a little bit further down the road than the high school was in terms of its design when we started to engage with them. And I think one of our goals was to understand what they wanted to do, but their plan was to be heated and cooled by natural gas. And so we had a lot of discussions with them, and we did share with the board last year our discussion and proposal, which led to a lot of great discussion with them. And so from that, through the months of December, January, Dave Polson from our E&O manager, Vinny, our system engineer, and I met with them almost on a weekly basis to talk about what we could do. One of the things that was a huge factor to them was the fact that they're in the same discussion you guys just had about finance. They have, except they're further down the road, so they have a very fixed number. And so any proposal to change how the building was designed, including going from gas to electric heating, was a major, major issue. So we had to figure out ways to work with them to try to offset some of those costs. So the energy park idea came about where we would create a microgrid on Hemlock Road that would ultimately end up serving both locations. We would also, one of the issues with the building code in the state building code is that these buildings need to be solar ready and EV ready, but they don't need to actually have any of that in place at the time. So what we decided to do is create a concept that would bring all these things into play at the same time. So the energy park would be a microgrid, and it would serve ultimately both locations. We would site it at about a 1 acre site just at the end of Hemlock, just before you enter the tech property. So that's where we would site it. It would be perfectly located to serve both. What both schools will ultimately end up doing is have all electric heating and cooling. We as the light department would install roof-mounted solar right from day one, and we would also donate electric chargers to both so that they would actually be able to come out of the gate with electric vehicle charging. And they're not limited to what we're giving them. They could go further, but at a minimum, there will be 10 spaces per site that would be equipped with level 2 electric vehicle charging right out of the gate. So that was part of that. The site, the energy park itself would be a combination of resources, and that was the whole concept behind it. It would be battery, solar, generator, and potentially leaving space for future distributed generation technologies as they evolve over the next 10 years, because there's going to be a lot of evolution. So we wanted this park to be not only able to serve both locations, but also to be equipped to grow in the future as new technologies develop. The benefit that we were bringing to the table for both schools is that we become their emergency backup system. By building code, both of them would need to have up to, especially if they were all electric, up to a 2,000 kW diesel-fired generator by code to support any emergency loads in both their locations. We would ultimately take that over. The energy park itself would become their backup system. And so that's why we felt that we could bring something to the party for them. So that was the economics that we were able to bring to the tech, and we would also be able to bring to the high school. So it would eliminate the need for 2 generators at each location. I mean, 1 generator at each location. We would also provide educational opportunities, because obviously we're bringing a lot of things together in what we call a true microgrid. We're very lucky out in front of the high school on Farm Street that we do actually have a place to connect 2 substations, because we have the Wallace substation up on Salem and we have the VB substation on Farm Street, and both are actually interconnected past here. So A, it's a very reliable location to begin with, but B, now that makes the location of a energy park that interconnects the 2 valuable. You add in the fact that we would have a battery, solar, and a generator all in one place. It makes it a true microgrid, so that if we lost source power from the street, the microgrid could stay up and serve both locations. Between the combination of battery, solar, and generator, we could ultimately serve both buildings for the long term. God forbid we ever had a long-term outage, and we haven't really had one, here, but the idea is that can you disconnect, it makes it a microgrid if you can actually disconnect from the grid, and this location could. It would also add to our peak shaving capabilities. That's what the benefit that the light department would be in. We can, once a month, the New England region hits a peak for transmission, and once a year it hits an overall peak. And if we can manage that peak by using the energy park itself, it saves all the ratepayers money. So the more we can control our peak, the better we are. So that's the benefit that all the ratepayers will ultimately get. Again, the key is that it also promotes electrification, reduces carbon emissions overall, and it moves us towards our 2050 goal of net zero. Again, as I mentioned at the beginning, each building would start out with solar on the roof. We're estimating about 300 kW, but each building roof is a little bit different, so we're going to work very specifically with each school to make sure that we maximize the solar capability of each location. The way it would work is that each building, we would install the solar, they would get the maximum output that they can use. Whatever doesn't get used by those buildings would flow back to the energy park and actually charge the battery. So that's the benefit of this concept, as well as making it an educational tool for the students at both schools. And then I think the other piece of it is, as we see the need for electric vehicles and movement towards electric vehicles growing, again, the building code that was referred to in the, is that they be EV ready, but we actually want to make sure that they actually get installed from day one, and that there's the beginning of an EV infrastructure that's already there that can be expanded upon. So. Just in terms of location, this is coming from the Voc towards Farm Street. It would be on the left-hand side just as you exit the gate. That's what it looks like today. That's the location, and then we just did a rendering of it, what it would look like going forward as we put it in. It would be a minimum of 25 feet back off the road, and then what you would see on the street side is the batteries. Then there's a driveway in the middle, and then there's some switch gear, and the generator itself would be on the other side of a driveway. So it would all be pretty well screened in terms of what the streetscape would look like as you came down Hemlock and you were about to enter the tech property. So, in terms of a schedule, you know, we've been working on engineering and designing this all year. The plan would be that this would be on town meeting warrant in November, and because we would need an easement from the town. The land that we're looking to go on is owned by the town, and Tom and Mike can probably better articulate the rules and regulations and what we need to do to get an easement from the town to build on this site, so.
Sure. Tom's perhaps better suited to do it, but I'll give my perspective. There's really two things going on. Number one, we need the easement. In order to get an easement, that it has to be approved by a 2/3 vote at town meeting. In order to get that vote, obviously, we need to get on the warrant, which is, you know, bullet point 1 as to why we're here. The second thing is because back in 1955, when this property was deeded to the town, I think it was 55, there was a finance committee vote or a recommendation, a town meeting vote, that the town accept the property for playground purposes. So it becomes subject to an article of the state constitution, which means we need a legislative 2/3 vote on a home rule petition as well. So in order to get to that, we also need a vote from you folks, I think it's a 2/3 vote perhaps here, to add that to the warrant so that we, you authorize Steve or the town or Tom to seek that home rule petition from the state legislature.
That's a lot.
Yeah, I
That's
didn't know
all I have
about
to say
that
about
second. And as someone who was staffer at the legislature, that's going to take a while. So that home rule petitions do not move quickly. So no, never. Okay, is that the end of the presentation?
I think so.
Yeah?
Yeah, we're happy to answer questions though.
Okay, that would be great. Any questions? Mike and then Ed.
Yeah, really, less of a question. I just wanted to point out some of the things that Peter had on there that he went by pretty quickly. The savings of over $1 million right from the get-go to each of the schools by virtue of what's being done here. The fact that the electricity bills are going to go up, but the energy costs are going to go way down. And I had the pleasure of meeting with, as liaison, and you see what kind of power I have. You get on by 9 o'clock. I had the pleasure of meeting with Peter and meeting with the engineers.
You can't leave with them, Mike. You have to stay.
Met with them on Monday for a good half day and saw the current battery installation. You call it a battery park or not?
Yeah, well, the existing batteries at our BB substation, but this would be a
This is totally different,
yeah.
but just to reiterate that is saving the ratepayers money on a daily basis, and it's really cool. You know, you've got your German batteries, you've got inverters, Westtech inverters, and what they're basically doing is taking the energy, and during the peak times, we are paying less because of the work that these folks have done. So I was just, and they're doing a lot of solar projects, got solar on the, and they're responsible for some of these EV and solar projects coming to fruition through their connection agreements, power connection agreements with the various developers, like at Lakeside. You know, chief engineer was telling me we're going to have EVs over at Lakeside, and, you know, Gas and Light is very proactive in that regard. So the battery park is different, of course. You're talking about a more of an all-energy type of park, but I'm 100% supportive. I think this can only be good for the town, whether it takes time in the home rule petition or not. So thank you very much for your presentation. Really appreciate it.
Ed?
Thank you, all three of you, for your presentation and your answers to questions so far. Can you help me understand, just at a basic level, so the solar component of it, when we're talking about these two new facilities, how much of the energy that will be consumed in the facilities would be generated through solar, like by estimate?
So a lot of it will depend on the actual size of each one that we could fit, but so you would estimate that if it's 300 kW system, it's going to be available, you know, approximately 20% of the time, and assuming when it's coincidental with the building being occupied and load. So it depends again on the size of the load at the building, but it would be about maybe a third of the load of the building during its operating hours, but when it's not, when in the summer months or late in the afternoon or whatever, when it's not using its full load, then that energy that's being generated by the solar panel is flowing back to the energy park to help charge the batteries. So that's part of this design.
So for the other 2/3 of energy that would be required for the buildings, where is that sourced from?
It's still sourced from us from the street.
Okay.
So.
Okay. And then,
however, the reason that we're able to save them money is that we're eliminating their need for backup generation at their individual buildings, and the way we do that is to have the battery and the generator together. But that takes $1 million off the plate for each of the individual ones, because the generator that they would needs to do both immediate evacuation requirements, emergency supply, as well as a more medium term where they need to keep their heating and cooling working so that they don't have pipes freeze. So there's 2 levels of generation that are required of a building like this. There's immediate evacuation, emergency generation, and then there's more intermediate term generation. And this energy park would be able to serve both those needs.
And then you mentioned the park is solar, battery, and generator. So how are the battery and generator components powered?
So from both the grid and from the supply coming from the solar. So it's interconnected to the grid. So what'll happen is the first stop coming off of Farm Street is actually the switchgear. So we have 2 lines that come in off of Farm Street to the switchgear. Then we come out of the switchgear to both buildings. Both buildings are also connected back to the switchgear with their solar. So whatever flows back is coming on to the same switchgear, and then the battery and the generator are also connected to it. So the cool part about today is that we have all these switches now that can have multiple inputs and multiple outputs. And if anybody's been by, and I don't know if Dave had a chance to take you to Wakefield Ave, but if you noticed over the past 2 years, we took out all that old equipment at Wakefield Ave and we replaced it with these green boxes. These green boxes are multiple position switches, basically, that can take multiple inputs and multiple outputs. So that's what you'll see there. You'll have inputs from multiple switchgear, we'll have tie switches, and you'll have the ability to have multiple sources from multiple directions.
And ultimately, would you say that the goal is net zero, cost savings, combination thereof, or kind of like where do the priorities kind of compare?
So I think there were multiple. The first, and it all started with that we really wanted the tech to go all electric if they could, because the fact that they were potentially going to add a heating load to our gas system is not helping it. We don't even need to go into all the issues around the gas world right now with cost and reliability, and so there's a lot of issues there. So we preferred that they not go on the gas system. So that was the starting point. But then there was a lot of reasons as we dug into this that, the building code only says that they need to be solar ready and EV ready. Well, we know they're going to need to be EV actually using it, because by the time this gets built, especially the high school, there's going to be a lot more people that have electric vehicles, a lot more teachers and administrators that show up with electric vehicles than before. So we need to be ready to serve that load at those schools. So we need to factor that in. And the code was so simple that it could be EV and solar ready by having a couple of pipes from the roof and a couple of pipes from the ground. It wasn't going to work. Ultimately, we would be chasing our tails trying to catch up 3 years from now when the tech came back to us and said, yeah, remember we said this, but we really need that. So we wanted to be on board right from the beginning and be ready for all those things right out of the gate and actually make them happen. So,
Thank you all again.
Jonathan?
Just this is sort of a follow-up question from Councilor Dombrowski's, then I have another question. So thinking about sort of the sequence of energy use for the schools with the microgrid, so I'm assuming sort of the solar, like kind of real-time solar generation would obviously be the first source of power that flows in. The second would be stored power in the batteries from...
No, most likely it would be our street system power first.
Okay.
Then it would be the battery.
So the battery is really sort of the backup for the street system?
Right.
Okay.
And the batteries would actually, the way it would help us meet the building code is that we actually have to have live feeds from the battery to each building to a live 300 kW transformer that basically serves as the quote-unquote generator. So that becomes because they're required to be able to immediately, within 90 seconds, have some form of egress from their building.
Yep.
So there has to be a transformer at each building that's connected directly to the battery so that those systems are immediately available to the school. And they'll actually be a lot faster than 90 seconds because they'll be alive all the time. Okay. And then from that, the battery will also be connected to some of the building systems to make sure that they can heat and cool as necessary for an intermediate period of time. And that gives us up to an hour to evaluate what's the source of the outage. Why did they go out? Can I switch them to another line? Do I expect it to be out for any line? Then at that point I could start the generator. Mm-hmm. Because then if it looks like it's going to exceed an hour, we would move to another source.
Okay.
And I'd argue in most cases it's not gonna, we're gonna be able to switch between sources. We're very lucky in Wakefield in that our two main substations are fed by different transmission lines, basically. So because of that, our reliability from the street side is very good, but it doesn't take away the need to have that backup requirement met.
Yeah, well, and especially too, because if there were a long-term emergency, this is the type of building that we'd want to think about using as a shelter for the public and so forth.
Exactly,
so,
and that was part of the thinking, especially for the high school side of it, is that it becomes a place that can be used for those functions.
This could be a shelter.
Yeah. So then, and sorry, I know these are probably very rudimentary questions for you guys, so appreciate your patience. So, let's say sort of there's excess solar power being generated, really sunny day beyond what the school is using. The battery is fully stored. I'm assuming that excess energy then flows back into the macro grid,
to
right?
the overall macro grid. Yeah, exactly.
And then just on the generator, I would have to imagine there are some sort of efficiency gains by having sort of a single gas generator versus two diesel generators.
Absolutely.
Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, well, natural gas is obviously cleaner than the diesels. Yeah. Also, having a larger generator that's, instead of two smaller generators, you gain a tremendous amount of efficiency there. It's a different class of generator, and so therefore there's more efficiency that way. And again, we reduce the amount of generation overall needed from 4,000 to 2,500 because we can integrate.
Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate the thought and creativity that went into this.
Julie? So just going back to the generator, so it's a natural gas generator. How many megawatts?
2,500. It's the same as what's up at.
So 2.5 megawatts.
Right.
Okay, 2,500 kilowatts.
Yeah.
Okay. It's the same as we have installed on Salem Street?
We have two on Salem Street. There would only be one at this location.
And it's a simple cycle, not a combined cycle?
Right.
Okay. Is there a way to put a combined cycle? Is it just too small?
It's probably just too small.
Okay.
We could look at it, but I think it's too small.
Okay. I guess one of my questions is, and you just said it was a relief, and I completely agree to not have them use natural gas for heating at either of these buildings. By using natural gas, even if just for this backup, we're comfortable that we can get supply. The supply. The towns in Massachusetts are trying to get off of natural gas. So, what's the justification of a 2.5 megawatt natural gas plant there?
Because we wouldn't get away from. There's two reasons. One, they wouldn't get any savings if we didn't take over the emergency supply. They would still have to put generators.
Okay.
In. So that's number one. Number two is that the size of the generators becomes more optimal, and also that the supply that we're required to have is much smaller than even what we would need to keep the heat both buildings.
Okay. So what kind of permitting is needed for this? Is there any state level permitting or anything?
There's all kind. Yeah. Because we're the utility. There's a little bit less than what would be required to have two generators at two individual buildings, but there's still going to be a lot. Mike and Tom just getting through the first steps of getting there's a lot of ball left to be played.
So are you, so my question is, will the state be looking at things like particulate pollution, limiting number of hours that it can run? Because this is not just gonna run to back up the schools, you're gonna run it for peak shaving as well.
Correct.
So
So-
how often do you think this 2.5 megawatt gas
So
plant's gonna run?
based on our history of what we've been running for peaks, we run about 4 hours 3 times a month. So about 12 hours a month.
So about 12 hours a month times 24 months. So that's a pretty, what capacity factor is that, like?
It's like 144 hours a year.
A year. So, okay.
So what happened? The way we use the current generators and our current battery is that every day MWEC looks at the ISO forecast and does an assessment of whether we think the system is going to peak today, and they actually project tomorrow and all week, and then we watch that as we go, and then if it looks like it's going to be a potential monthly peak or a potential overall capacity peak, they give us a notification to run. Those runs average 3 times a month and average
Okay.
4 hours a shot.
So do you think when we get the permit, it will be limited to those hours? Okay.
I'm sure it'll be limited.
Okay. Because I think
if you exceed
Yep.
like those uses, then it becomes a different type of generator.
Well, and that's one of my questions.
Yeah.
And I know I've spoken with the commissioners about this. This is a generator, this natural gas one is what I'm mostly concerned about. That would be completely within control of Wakefield.
Yeah.
So it's not
gonna be
bidding
dispatched.
into the capacity market. We're not entering into any
No,
long-term contracts with
It's
anyone.
considered the other side of the meter.
Okay.
The whole idea is to reduce our capacity bill.
So in theory, if we knew we were gonna hit a peak, I mean, the light department could come, and I know you're already doing a lot around energy efficiency, but in theory, could you say to Wakefield, could you do a blast that says we're hitting peak back down so that we don't have to start up these natural gas plants?
Well, we do that every time there's a peak anyway, yeah.
I'm not sure everybody knows about it, but just
Yeah.
in theory, the better we get on energy efficiency, the less often we would have to run these.
Well, yeah, but you still want to hit, there's direct dollar savings for hitting the one day. Because it takes money directly off the bill. So the way it works is that your transmission bill for this month is based on your highest day. So to the extent that we can reduce that, there's direct savings that pays for the battery and for the generator.
Okay.
So that's how you pay for those. That's how we had the business case for those systems when we installed them 5 years ago, is that the direct savings is the payback of reducing it by the 3 megawatts up there and the 5 megawatts there is.
And I completely understand the economics of this. I mean, I just think, we are still looking at climate, and I think there are decarbonizations, and you said yourself, technology is going to change probably tremendously in the next 10 years. So I guess my question really is, and I think you've answered it, is that Wakefield will have full control over this. We'll be watching new technologies. We'll be trying to use it as it phases out or as cleaner technologies come in. Hopefully, we will have commissioners that will be looking at that, and decisions can be made based on best available technology, based on costs, based on climate, and regulations.
Yeah.
Because I do feel like Massachusetts is moving a bit away from natural gas. I mean, if you just look at the roadmap, they talk about existing. You don't talk a whole lot about new ones going in. I completely understand it for this case. I'm so happy with everything you're doing. I just want to make sure that we all kind of understand what is there. I mean, your presentation didn't say it was a natural gas plant. I really would hope that we could be very transparent, and I'm kind of looking at the commissioners, when we go to town meeting, talk about what's really going to be there. There's a good case study for it to be there. There's good financial, there's good climate, there's good resiliency and reliability, but let's just really be very clear about educating the public on what it is. I was surprised just not to see any data. We never call it a natural gas plant until Jonathan said it. The word natural gas or the size, really, I guess the size you had talked about, but we really
For what
need to
it's
say
worth,
what it is.
the proposed warrant article does reference.
Okay, so the warrant, but it wasn't in our presentation.
Right, but it would be clear.
And I went back and looked at your minutes, and it was 3 megawatts. So I just think I think there's some we'll get all the information out. I know you guys are going to do a great job on this. I am so thankful. I know there's a long history kind of natural gas here. We will get there, I think, and I think this is a great way to do it. We're going to make this, we're gonna have one of the only energy parks in the state, if not the region, right? I mean,
Well,
I think
and
we're gonna
again,
become a showcase.
One of the benefits of this is that it's actually going to reduce overall natural gas usage by not making that school a natural gas heated school.
Oh,
So-
completely.
So, I mean, there's a net benefit right out
And
of
I
the
think
gate.
that's the number right out the gate you have to show. By going electric for these two schools, we are saving so many emissions. And so yes, having this natural gas is gonna shave some peak, it's gonna be use limited, it's gonna go through all of the Massachusetts state requirements, it makes sense. And that's just where I wanted to get to.
And I mean, I think you are right from my perspective. This is an innovation site as well and a demonstration site. You have two schools here. One of them is a technical school. That's our future workforce. That's our children being educated in these fields. And it's right there. They can walk out the door and operate it, see it operated, visit it without having to go far.
Right.
So that's
I mean, all the
really
switching
cool.
technology you're talking about, like that's being, you know, we could get them exposure to some of that and it happens automatically and there's just so much technology there. It's going to be really great. I just think that we just want to make sure we're very clear about what it is. And I think the net benefit is very, very clear.
Anne?
So I just have a question. I think this is all really exciting, and you made an excellent point, Jen. And I always like it when Wakefield can be a leader, so I think it's great. My question is it, so the approval that we need, the legislative home rule thing, we have this starting in 2022. So how, does this need to get the legislative home rule?
The first step is town meeting, right?
Right, so
So we have
we
to go to
need
town.
to get the approval from, it's looking to go on town land.
Right.
So we need approval from town meeting to get
To
an
build.
easement for that land. So
Right.
there's an article that Tom and Mike have drafted to get town meeting approval, but because of the initially defined use for it of being a
Right,
park,
right.
there's additional steps we have to take.
So I would
Yeah.
say too, in terms of timing and the home rule issue, because I was a legislative staffer for a number of years,
Mm-hmm.
we can draw, I think one benefit we have here is that we directly benefit the vocational school. And the vocational school includes a lot of communities that
Yes,
have legislators. So we'll have I would imagine, a pretty good team effort
Yeah.
up at Beacon Hill to push this perhaps more quickly than might otherwise be the case.
Okay, because I think it
see.
would probably
We'll see.
pass. It's just the timing, so.
Oh, yeah, yep. Well, we'll be pushing as hard as we can, as fast as we can.
Yeah, the other issue is there's obviously time constraints on the tech side because they're further down the road. So we have to order equipment and get this thing built.
Right.
And we're all aware of the time, the powers, the supply chain issues. We have pieces of equipment that are 2 years out, so there's all kinds of supply chain issues. So we have to try to get this moving because they're planning to move in the fall of '25.
So for after town meeting, though, we still, that home
Fall
rule
26.
is,
Fall of '25, I think, for the tech, isn't it?
No, fall of 26. Fall of 26. No, I'm sorry,
Oh.
January of 26.
Okay.
January 26. We're fall of 26, yeah.
I thought we were fall of 27. We're fall of 27.
No,
The high
26.
school?
They move back in
26,
26.
yeah.
I thought he just said
Because they have to tear
completion.
down the
Once they
old
tear
school
down everything
and
else.
redo Beasley after.
Yeah,
they
oh,
move
yeah,
it.
yeah. Okay.
So, but they need to be fully, we need to be ready for them by the fall of '26, even if they're not moving in till January. It needs to have full capability by the fall. So that's the date we're targeting. So we gotta be ready for the fall of '25.
Yeah, I do agree with Attorney McCarthy. We'll have great support from a lot of different legislatures, which is very good when you're going for a home rule petition. They get a lot of different
Yeah,
attacks.
yeah.
Attack levels, so.
Good.
Including the minority leader who is in North Reading. So he was at the vote today, so I'm sure they'll push it.
And there's a lot, because it's the tech involved also, there's a lot of support and, both are. I will say, this was a group that had a design and we were able to meet with them. Dave did Dave hosted most of the meetings, but it was a lot of discussion, a lot of time, a lot of understanding their needs. It took a lot to move them, but now they're very excited about all that's involved in this. And so there's gonna be support from multiple areas, so.
The last piece I will say is there's, from a legislative perspective, there's a lot of concern about clean energy workforce development in this state, being one of the clean energy hubs in the United States. And so this school helps to unlock some of that potential to retrain our workforce. And more conversations are how can we reach folks that are younger, who haven't already made their career decisions in this. And they're talking about high schools, and they're talking about vocational schools as the area of opportunity for that.
I just had a quick question. I know I guess there was a Voc meeting today and there was some concern about the trees, and so this looks like we might be taking some trees down.
We will have to take trees down.
Is there a kind of a plan to replant where we can,
Yeah,
or?
So we did a survey of the site. We'll have to take down approximately 128 trees, but we've over the past 5 years, we've replaced any tree we've removed. So we will continue with that program. So we'll replant all 128 trees.
Great.
So what we've done is we've tried to maintain, we're not gonna touch, part of the land is for any future DG. We're not gonna take anything off that part, other than large pines that could fall in hazard. Across the front, we're setting it back a minimum of 25 feet. So we're gonna save as much as we can on the front, except for a hazard tree. And then we'll have to obviously remove them from the building area. But we'll commit to replacing those, working with Dennis to replace all, 128 trees we have to take down.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Mike?
Just to follow up, on the educational front, when I met with David and Vinny, they were talking about outreach to the schools. Is that kind of a high-level thing you guys are thinking about right now, maybe?
Oh, yeah, we already work very closely with the tech. We always have a co-op student every term. We actually, 3 of our employees have come from their time as a summer student and a tech student, and so it's a great feeder ground for from kids that become interested in this field, and not just linemen, but also we have a substation tech, and we have somebody who ended up going to the gas side. So it's a great it's a great feeder ground, as Jen said, for the workforce as well. And we've applied already for a APPA grant that would help fund some developing of some technology around educating about the energy park. So we have it's called a DEED grant from APPA that we've applied for to help maybe improve, create some of these educational tools.
Great, thank you.
Madam Chair, I think we can handle this in one article at town meeting. One article, so I know that Tom and Mike have been working to draft that, so.
Great.
It's not completely completed yet, but close.
Yeah, I was just looking at the calendar, so town meeting's November 19th, and petitions are due October 21st. So we have a little bit of time to kind of finalize the language, and then we can look at that again.
And I would suggest that it be on the warrant, and the town council be the sponsor, and then MLD speaks as well.
Yeah, and sometime before town meeting, I'll prepare the surplus determination that you need to make in writing. That is, that this part of the land is surplus to the town's needs, and therefore town meeting is free to vote in favor of granting the easement.
That's great. Yeah, no, I'd heard about this park, but this presentation was really helpful, and I think you've given us a lot to think about. And so we will look forward to that language, and then look forward to town meeting. Thank you very much.
And then, I don't know, do you want me to talk about the ARPA stuff, or you can share that with them after?
I'll share that with them after. Yeah.
Excellent. Works for me.
It was smart, though. That was a good strategy.
It's just added to the list.
Thank you all.
Thank
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Michael.
Thanks for your patience.
Okay, moving on. Item 8, Veterans Memorial Field. There is a proposal for new signage. Are the Benjamins on the call, Sherry? I know it's late.
No, they stayed right on.
Okay,
They stayed
oh.
right over. Yeah.
Steve, do you want to start?
Sure,
or-
I'll start. In everyone's package, and I know that hopefully WCAT is going to show that up there. So through the generosity of Lois and Dan Benjamin, there they are right there, they would like to gift to the town a sign at Veterans Field. It's there, it's a little bit in that location. They've met with Dennis. and to have that in front of the our wonderful Veterans Field, because there really isn't any signage there that dignifies the land. Our hope is to have a ceremony on unveiling of the sign on Veterans Day of this year, early in the morning, so hopefully it won't be too cold, but in any event, we can brave that and then go to the regular Veterans Day ceremony at 11, so this may be at 9 in the morning beforehand. Tonight, other than I know the Benjamins may want to talk about the sign a little bit, it looks great to me. Because we do have a structures placed adjacent to Lake Quannapow and Veterans Field policy, what I'd like to ask the council to open a public comment period on this for the next 2 meetings, which our policy says it's either 30 days or 2 town council meetings, whichever was less. I think our town council meeting would be, help me out, Sherry, it'd be October, the second one in October.
It's October 12th.
Second one in October. Second
Yeah.
meeting.
Oh, the second one. I'm sorry.
26th.
October 24th.
24th, October 24th. I can't imagine there would be any objections to this. I think it's a great project, and I thank Dan and Lois for offering this to the town, but that is our policy, so we should follow it. So I don't know if you, Madam Chair, if you want Dan and Lois to say a few words.
I do. Hi, thank you for joining us. Is there anything that you would like to add? You're on mute, Dan.
Dan, you're on mute, yeah.
If you just give me 2 minutes about the history of this, and this was a project basically for the Veterans Advisory Board that accepted it, and we kind of ran with it. But this is all financed by Lois, and it was her next door neighbor when she was growing up, who was Lois Adams and Frank Adams, and they were very involved with the First Baptist Church here in Wakefield. And they were also one of the first ones that started the first food pantry here in Wakefield, when it was literally a closet. And they started that along with Gladys Parker, who lived across the street from Lois. And she was actually the first woman, I believe, officer in the Savings Bank in Wakefield here. And we gave this to the Veterans Advisory Board. They said, run with it. We have. And even though I think it's still Wednesday, right? And this is no tech talk, but I'll give you a brief history. Back in 1929, there used to be ice houses all along, from the boat ramp all the way up to the old cemetery. And in 1929, there was a general alarm fire that destroyed all these ice houses. The only thing left standing was the Hartshorn house, believe it or not. And the old ice houses back in those days were wood, 2-3 stories high, and filled with sawdust, maybe 2-3 feet thick. So once a fire got going there, it wiped it completely out. And back in 1933-34, they had a project that was called the Church Street Playground. And this was a WPA project. And if anybody remembers it, WPA built things like at, Harts Hill, Braycott. They were built to stay, and a lot of the stuff is still around. But it was supposed to be a ball field, a tennis court, a playground, and believe it or not, a skating rink. And I know when I was a kid back in the 50s, they used to take one of the light towers from Veterans Field, turn it around backwards, and it would light up Hartson's Cove. And the DPW would get on there with a pickup truck and plow it off. Of course, liability today, they'd never do that. But back in 1943, the Harry E. Nelson American Legion Post had an article at the Springtown meeting to call it Veterans Field. And it was accepted at that as the article, and it was called Veterans Field. Of course, 1943 was right in the middle of World War II, and things were just forgotten. Even that Memorial Day that year, nobody remembered it. The next year was Wakefield's tricentennial, 300th anniversary year. It still was not mentioned anywhere. And since that time, we're going back now 80 years, it was never dedicated or never rededicated. So what we're trying to do is basically dedicate it or rededicate it this coming Veterans Day at 11 o'clock. This will be done at 9 o'clock in the morning, just before the regular Veterans Day activities. But, myself as a kid, I can remember riding my bike down to Veterans Field for the softball games. It used to be at like 6:30, 8:30 at night. And it was great, you know, if I could be a bat boy for the day, that was something for me. And I'd have that baseball glove on my handlebars and maybe a baseball card and a clothespin or something on my wheels, the spokes. Maybe Steve Mayo remembers those days.
What are you saying?
But I went down there and they were, you know, teams like the Marco Bombers, the White House Smoothies, the Jokers, you know, town teams like, you know, Crystal Community Club, KSC, the Light Department with Jimmy Scott playing. I can remember him playing. He was, you know, a good friend. Johnny Moore, the West Side Social Club with those green and white uniforms. Johnny Moore running up those granite stairs in center field, catching a ball, parking the ball out onto Chestnut Street or on North Avenue, I should say, Church Street. But, you know, those granite steps are still up there. And according to Dennis Fazio, all they did was just cover them up. But I mean, I'm thinking back to Eddie Famer, if anybody remembers that. He was a semi-pro softball pitcher. He used to pitch from second base, and he had two other people on the team, and he'd beat any team that he played against. But you know, this would be maybe something the police and fire could get back, that charity game they used to have every year. Or I can remember back when the girls had softball teams for the CYO teams here in Wakefield. And they were very good teams. And if I remember right, one of our selectmen, or select woman at the time, Judy Babb, was a second baseman on that Wakefield High St. Joseph team. And those are the things I remember from Veterans Field. And I just think that, you know, the dedication of this will be something really, you know, great. Lois is very excited about it. Like I said, she'll finance it. And it's going to look great. It's, you know, with all the work they've done over by Veterans Field with the pickleball courts, you know, the wildflowers on the Floral Way, they're going to put up the fencing up by the old burying grounds. This is what I'm saying is the ribbon on the whole thing. There'll also be a little sign above the backstop that says Veterans Field too. So anybody playing on Veterans Field will know that's Veterans Field now. And it's, you know, 80 years overdue. And I thank Dennis Fazio for working with us, Bobby Sardella, Jeff Claps, and of course the Veterans Advisory Board for running with this with me. And it'll be great, Veterans Day, 9 o'clock in the morning, a short ceremony, but the American Legion will be there to dedicate it this time around.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you and Lois for everything that you do for this town.
Actually, if I could just change this around a little bit, Lois and Frank and Gladys Parker were very close to my parents. I was named after Lois. So this is one of the reasons why I wanted to get involved. And they never had any kids. And we were the ones that just kind of came along, and my parents were very close to them, Mary and Joe Jurema. And I find it very close to my heart. And they're the one that started the food pantry, did a lot of stuff. So this is where I feel very important, I guess.
And Lois Adams did many, she was a painter also, did many paintings at the Little Red Schoolhouse, the Hearts on House itself, in that area. So it means a lot to Lois Adams at the time. They're no longer here, but this is dedicated to them also.
Well, again, thank you so much. Thank you both for all that you do for our town. Like Steve said, because 6 years ago we created a park adjacent structure policy, we have to go to meetings. So we will vote on this October 26th, which gives us enough time before Veterans Day, which is November 11th, 24th, excuse me.
Do we need to take a vote?
I think
to-
so. I think if you could open the comment period.
So I'd like to make a motion then to open the public comment period until our October 24th meeting.
Do you have a second? Okay, great. And then discussion? Ed, did you have something?
Yes, I just wanted to mention, this is great. Lois, Dan, it's phenomenal. I think it's a great addition. And noticing the drawing, we have 6 branches of the military now, right? And I think there's only 5 that are.
They'll be all 6. They'll be all 6.
Okay, because it's.
Including this big force.
Your eyesight's really great there, Ed.
Oh, I'd seen it in the packet before.
Oh, I was like, I was very impressed.
Actually, the Space Force now has a song too, I guess, that goes along with the song that they play, the ensemble on Veterans Day.
Right, that's what I was thinking, because I know the flag started to be included as well at the last year's, I guess, or 2 years ago. Thank you.
That's great. Okay, let's take there's a motion that was seconded. Let's take a vote. Counselor Galvin?
Yes.
Counselor Chines?
Yes.
Counselor Dennehy?
Yes.
Counselor Dabrowski?
Aye.
Counselor McLean?
Yes.
Counselor Vincent?
Yes.
And myself also unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Bob and
Thank you.
Lois. Have a good
Dan and
night.
Lois, this is wonderful.
It's really wonderful.
Okay, item 9, licenses. I'm going to talk very quickly. Item 9A, application for amendment change of DBA for Dockside at Wakefield from Dockside, your neighborhood family restaurant, to Floramos, Wakefield. Do I have a motion?
So moved with best wishes.
Do I have a second? Great. Any discussion? Okay, roll call vote. Julie?
Aye.
Jonathan?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
Ed?
Aye.
Mike?
Yes.
And Bob?
Yes.
Yes, and myself as well. Item 9B, request for a one-day liquor license for a tapped beer truck for a private event at Vestmark, 100 Quanapowhat Parkway on October 4th from 3 until 5, subject to the required department sign-offs. And Sherry, you help them go through all the sign-offs that they need, correct? Confirming.
Yes, correct.
Great.
So moved.
Second.
Great. We have a motion and second. Any discussion? Okay. A vote. Julie?
Yes.
Jonathan?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes, contingent on an invite, though.
I think I asked. I think it's a private work event.
It is.
Mike?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
And myself, a yes as well. Item 9C, a request for a one-day liquor license for Hartshorn's House for an event on November 12th from 12 until 7 p.m. subject to the required department sign-offs.
So moved.
Second. I bet you can get invited to this one.
Any discussion? This is their annual event, has been successful the last couple of years, right?
Not only will you get an invite, but you should go because it's a great event.
It is a great event. Okay, we will take a vote. All in favor. Julie?
Yes.
Jonathan?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
Ed?
Aye.
Mike?
Yes.
And Bob?
Yes.
And myself, yes, unanimous as well. And item 9D, a request for a new Class 2 license for Modern Classic Investment Cars LLC located at 383R Lowell Street, subject to the required department sign-offs.
So moved.
Second.
Great. Any discussion? Okay, and then all in favor. Julie?
Aye.
Jonathan?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
Ed?
Aye.
Mike?
Yes.
And Bob?
Yes.
And myself, yes as well. Okay, 2 items under appointments. Item 10A, we have a request to advertise for a member to the Zoning Board of Appeals due to a resignation to fulfill a 3-year term expiring April 30th, 2023.
So moved.
Second.
Great. Any discussion?
I just have a question on this one. So I know we have kind of alternate members and kind of voting members on the Zoning Board of Appeals. So this is to replace a voting member?
Correct.
Correct.
Right.
So
So alternates should apply if they wish to.
got it. And so if we do appoint an alternate to the voting position, are we able to then?
Then we'll have to advertise.
So then
for
we'll
another-
have a second advertisement
Exactly.
for the, okay.
Exactly.
Just wanted to make sure I
Yeah.
understood that
Yeah.
process. So we couldn't kind of also appoint an like kind of an alternate to replace an alternate at that meeting?
Well, we'd have to advertise for someone to apply for an alternate tonight.
Which isn't open yet?
Which isn't open yet,
Okay.
yeah.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
That was,
I second? I can't
that was
remember
a
what I said.
circular. No, I
You
think,
Okay.
okay, and discussion, anything else on that? Okay, all in favor, Julie?
Yes.
Jonathan?
Yes.
Anne?
Yes.
Ed?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
And Bob?
Yes.
And myself as well. And item 10B, a request to advertise for a student member to the Environmental Sustainability Committee for a one-year term expiring June 30th, 2023.
So moved.
Second.
Great. Any discussion?
Stepped on my line.
And all in favor,
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Jonathan?
Yes.
Anne?
Yes.
Ed?
Aye.
Mike?
Yes.
And Bob?
Yes.
And myself as well, yes. Item 11, donations. 11A, we have a request to accept and expand a gift or gifts in the amount of $20,125 to the library from various donors with thanks.
So moved.
Second.
Great. Any discussion? And roll call vote. Julie?
Yeah, aye.
Jonathan?
Yes.
Anne?
Yes.
Ed?
Aye.
Mike?
Yes.
And Bob?
Yes, and I'm sorry you have to do all these roll calls.
That's okay. No, it's good. It is, yeah, it is totally great. I was, yes, unanimous. Item 11B, request to accept and expand a gift or gifts to the Council on Aging in the amount of $200 from various donors with thanks.
So moved.
Second.
Second, any discussion? And a vote. Julie?
Yes.
Jonathan?
Yes.
Anne?
Yes.
Ed?
Aye.
Mike?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
And myself, yes, all unanimous. And we will move on to item 12, the American Rescue Plan Act, and I will pass the baton to Steve.
Thank you very much. I will go very quickly during the initial part of this presentation because I know the hour was late, but I thought a refresher might be good maybe for the people at home. So the Federal American Rescue Plan Act, commonly known as ARPA, is providing funds to Commonwealth and its municipalities from the Coronavirus State Fiscal Recovery Fund and Coronavirus Local Fiscal Recovery Fund. Was signed into law March 11th, 2021. Used for expenses from March 3rd, 2021 forward, which won't be a problem because we're looking forward today. One thing we do need to be concerned about, all costs must be incurred or obligated by December 31st, 2024. So we have a little bit of time, but it is, the window is closing. The funds are received directly from the U.S. Treasury, although that is a misnomer because it does come through the state and there is a little delay in getting it from the state to us, but that's not a problem. Wakefield's share is $8 million, and that is part of that. The vast majority is from the county. Massachusetts does really, or most of Massachusetts does not have a vibrant county system where the rest of the country does. So Wakefield gets a big share of the county money and then gets our town money directly to town, and that's all based on population. Number of eligible expense categories that we as a town would submit: public health spending, economic impacts of public health emergency, lost public sector revenue, and that's highlighted for a reason that I'll talk about in a second. Premium pay for essential workers, water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. And again, these are national guidelines. So anyways, instead of having communities run through hoops, the Treasury guidance came out and said that if you received less than 10 million, or if you received more than 10 million, you could designate 10 million to spend on any government service that the town provides. With a few, and Wakefield received 8, so we fall into that category. There are a couple of exclusions, though. Funding of debt service or replenishing reserves, settling judgments, tax reduction, which means we couldn't lower people's taxes with this, pension fund deposits, we couldn't fund pension, and we could not do anything that would undermine CDC mitigation practices, which of course we wouldn't, but that's something that the Treasury put in their guidance. So public health spending would be COVID-19 mitigation efforts, medical expenses, behavioral health. We've actually used some of that in our budget process the last few years. Health and safety personnel as well. We could mitigate impacts of the public health emergency on workers, households, small businesses, nonprofits, education. We could, critical infrastructure personnel, overtime costs, we could do that as well. water, sewer, and broadband. And again, these are national items that it came under. But we certainly can use it for any legitimate government expense, with the exception of those basically boosting your reserves or paying for judgments. So what we did, which I'm very proud of our team for doing this, what a lot of communities haven't done, we actually did have at least a webinar and heard from the public. And we talked about all of these different items here. And the public did come back and said they wanted increased mental health services for students and residents. And we did do that in our budget process, as you may recall. A lot of them wanted outdoor projects, including green space, pedestrian access, and other amenities. Pop-up fence people talked about, essential worker pay, and business support, including outdoor dining and facade improvements. And I'd say we've done a lot of these items with and without the ARPA money. We even went further and asked to put out a survey. I think the top one there, maybe a lot of maybe relatives filled that one out. We don't know who they are. But a lot of these others we've done, and outdoor amenities certainly being huge, and other infrastructure needs out there. Interesting enough, people want a tax relief. I get that, but that's not something that we could use this for. So we have spent over the last few years in the budgets, and these have been voted on at town meeting for fiscal year 22 and 23, a little over $1 million in ARPA funds. Some of these were sunset, some of these were phasing in certain new positions, like in the health department budget. We're phasing that in, and we proposed at the time of using $75,000 of that in fiscal year 24. We talked about that a little bit tonight with the police department about the social services we're doing there. We also had some direct ARPA expenditures, really going through the actual tail end, and I'm saying tail end of the pandemic, that we did, and a lot of those things we did. And the town council did also vote $100,000 for the fit court at our May 9th town meeting. And at that point, we really talked about maybe we should, instead of piecemealing this in, we should really have a overall plan. At that time, I kind of put together and I said, geez, maybe we should put, $500,000 into business and nonprofits, $5.5 million into infrastructure with all that means, maybe holding some money for households, and maybe hold some money in contingency. And then I asked for your input several times, and thank you very much. And I asked for our department heads to give some of their items. And I will tell you, it's a great exercise, and every single idea or thought that was presented is certainly worthy, and I wish that we had a lot more money to fund all of them, but we don't. And I've found over the years, and I think I've said that to some of you on occasion, the only thing worse than no money is having a little bit of money. So now that we have a little bit of money, everyone weighed in. So here's what came in from all of the town council in some various areas. Lake Pad feasibility and construction. Now what this is really talking about is really the North Ave side of the lake, and making that much more, I would say, aesthetically pleasing. There's been some great work done by the Friends of the Lake Quanapawit regarding some paths that are already there, so getting closer to the lake. I would also looking at trying to bridge the gap between Hall Park and Quanapawit Parkway, and that may mean going over some private land. A lot of this is over our own land, town-owned land, which is wonderful. So those are some things that we look at, and a lot of the council looked at that. We've talked about breaking out the different areas in the Envision project, and the Upper Common area is a nice bite that we can look at. That's really from the Rockery to Church Street, and implementing that wonderful project. Lake Quanapawit cleanup, the water in Lake Quanapawit cleanup's been mentioned, and that could be added to some of the money from some of the developers. That's a ongoing issue going on. Sidewalk expansion townwide, I've heard that from everybody, whether it's repair or expansion. Splash pad, I think, would be a really fun and cool
cool in two aspects, cooling and cool for people. ADA accessible playground. There are, a number of them that we have in town. I think we would like to probably add one at the Doyle School, and that is the not only the apparatus but the flooring and things like that. Video conference rooms. This is something that we really have talked about together. Is that Zoom? We noticed tonight we have a colleague that is able to Zoom in tonight. I think that this remote meetings is something that's here to stay, but I think people also like to come in and meet. So what this would allow us to do is to really look at our conference rooms here, public safety building, library, and maybe some other locations, civic center, and allow them all to have hybrid meetings. We have one, I'll call it a pilot program, second floor town hall, that has worked very well. We've had a few meetings in there, but I think that is the wave of the future, and that's how we're going to be very transparent to the public and allow people that want to come in. Albion Cultural Exchange renovations. This would include putting the elevator to the second floor and completing the loft spaces that we've talked about. There is and doing some handicapped accessible entrances there. There is actually a architectural study on that would pull that out. Public shade trees, I've heard a lot, we've talked a little about that tonight, but maybe having a public shade tree plan and putting in more into that over the next few years would be great as well. Continuing on, an additional, and these are great suggestions, everyone. Additional turf field and a track. There have been some questions, I think, from some of our sports groups looking for that. Housing expansion for seniors study. This is a growing issue in the town, and we are really looking at. We really are looking at a question where, and I think maybe I'm getting more sensitive to this as I get older, about, our seniors are looking to stay in the town, their homes are too big, and, looking at that, both public and privately done. Senior housing development, whether we should use some of our seed money to look at either Butler Ave or Erd School or other areas, and those are two sections in there. Solar field with the MWGLD, about putting a solar farm. We talked about that a little bit tonight, but this would be an additional one that would probably add solar-powered electricity right into the grid. Greenwood beautification, including undergrounding the utilities, which is electric, cable, telephone, very expensive, very tight down there, and also maybe looking for some sprucing that up and we've done a little bit of that, we should certainly do more. Some sense and fineage replacements around town. Water truck a la the MWRA to take to town events and particularly the farmers market, what have you. Veterans monuments restoration, we talked about that a little bit tonight. I think the actual amount a few years ago, as I recall, was $130,000. That was a number of years ago. That's a great looking monument, could even be better. Townwide energy improvements, as part of the green energy initiative, we were looking at, there are a number of existing buildings, the new high school aside, that could use, that need some upgrades that we could do and then maybe get some grants later on. This would be something that would be phased in. This may push this in a little bit quicker. So those come to $13,255,000, and we have about 6. But they're all good. They're all wonderful to dream. So I think that's all great.
Close.
I know, it was pretty good. Some additional requests. We talked about a facade program of matching with the businesses downtown. Innovation space. Talked about the possibility of working with some of our landlords downtown to create an innovation space where businesses could come in and could get started and move on. WCAT support, that's in the request. You've seen that was the amount that they requested tonight. Property redevelopment, and I think what this was thought about was, we do have a couple of properties downtown, one in particular, that maybe we would want to, do a friendly purchase, and who knows if that's even enough, or would be accepted. And position of a town planner.
And something that we did talk about, and something I'm very, very concerned about this winter, is heating costs. And I think there are people that are really going to suffer heating their homes. So we talked about maybe increasing our emergency fund, calling it a heating contingency fund. So I also went out to my departments to see items that they may be interested in, because they're out there in the fields as well. Senior center replacement of gym equipment. Our gym equipment there is old, and that's a very minor request. Conservation Commission is looking at all Wakefield town-owned property, and how is it owned? Is it owned? Are we going to have any surprises coming in? How it was accepted years ago? Some of it's tax title, some of it isn't, and looking at all their properties all over the town, and they've done a pretty good report for me showing where they are. Doing a title search on each one will certainly help us decide how we have to handle it, and that's probably going to be about $200 per property. That would cover that. Turf field replacement. We are actually getting to the end of our life on some of our turf fields, particularly Landrigan Field. And there was, interestingly enough, an article in this Sunday's Globe that talked about when turf fields get older, they need to be replaced. They don't bounce. They get very hard. Certainly with the high school project, we don't have to worry about the Beasley Oval. That'll be part of the project. But Landrigan Field is getting up there in the next couple of years. And after that, a few years later, Galvin, the two fields at Galvin, we'll have to look at and make a decision. Rail to trail and envision projects. So something that we've been working with our town engineer and DPW is we talked about we're really gonna do a lot of our rail to trail stuff on our own because it's gonna take a long time to get through the Linfield Reedy Meadow issue. We've talked about that. So we want to kind of align some of these projects with to get on a different way on the tip list. So what this would allow us to complete all the engineering for kind of the rail to trail head at Water Street and at the Water Street area, and then go all the way up to Maine as part of the Envision project, and would let us look at that area. So that's and at the Galvin Middle School, so where the trailhead comes in there. So that's an exciting prospect as well. They're all exciting. Brush fire apparatus, the fire chief and his deputy was here a few weeks ago, and they talked about that. New Musco lighting at Vets Field. The Vets Fielding lights are old, and although we don't turn them around anymore to shine onto Lake Quinnipiac, they do spread out more than the new Musco lighting that we have, like at Landrigan, that would bring down. We've also talked about putting in ADA accessible swings at some of our other playgrounds, and these are really, really cool. People can go right there, children that are disabled can go right on there with their apparatus and really be part of the community. I had one department head that said we should use this to fund our FY24 capital plan. I won't say who that was, but you can guess. DPW talked about maybe speeding up with some water improvements in different areas of town. That would help pull that out of the water and sewer rates. Police chief talked about drones. 2 drones for his department would be $25,000. The fuel island is the island at the DPW garage, and that will have to be redone at some point. And that's where all of our town cars fill up, and that's something that will have to be done at some point. Moulton Playground upgrades, we talked about a great vision for Moulton when we did the actual fit court. This would do the do most of the items for the kind of what are the floor hockey? What do we call it? Street hockey. I can never. I'm a basketball guy, so I never get that. And we've also haven't heard back from the Boston Bruins, but we're hoping that maybe they'll participate in that as well. And the MLD did drop off to me after very late, and I will send this around. An ARPA fund application, low income energy efficiency program. And in it, they are talking about covering enhanced weatherization for the public, heat pump installations, solar panel installations, loans for energy efficiency, and also a big part of this is doing some solar power at Broadway and Harts Hill, both within the, through the Wakefield Housing Authority, putting solar in those areas to help out with that. And so the total department requests were 9,208.
9 million.
9 million, I'm sorry, 9,000 would be good, right?
Okay, I'll vote for that.
It's okay. And we end up all in a scant 27,000. So, 27 million, Freudian slip. I think that all of these are really, I think it's great to dream and to go forward, and I think that the process that our council is going through, I think, is leagues ahead of what some of the other communities are doing. They're just taking it and doing one thing, and not even, didn't open it up to the community, didn't open up to suggestions, didn't open up to department heads. So I want to thank the council for, sending in their recommendations, and I think this is something that we need to consider, and, I feel like I'm at our capital planning meetings, when at the first meeting, there's, double or triple for what we have to spend, and then we kind of talk it out and go through. So I'm happy to talk about any of these. Most of them are from you, so you know all about them. And we can, no vote is even looked for tonight. It's really something to kind of get our juices flowing, and maybe to, drill this down a little bit, or maybe decide on a few at a future meeting and then come back and regroup. So that's where I am. Sorry to do it so quick, but I knew it was late.
No, it is late. Any questions for Steve? So I really, I thank you for putting that together. The number just kept on increasing, but they're all great projects. I think the ask of town councilors and people watching is to look at the slides, look at the suggestions, let us know what really spoke to you. And then we'll have that conversation with Steve. And I think that's a good plan, that at a future meeting, we kind of vote on, you said, I've heard that there is a lot of overlap between the 7 of us. So I think kind of we've now got some concrete ideas of what really speaks to us. A water truck. I think all of us will support Julie in that. But what helps, again, this is money where we get to be creative and really think community-wide. That helps the most people in our town, and the most people get to benefit, and being prepared for, whatever the future holds. So, I ask everyone to kind of look at the slides and then have conversations with me or with Steve. Go ahead, John.
I was going to say, if I can make a suggestion, I wonder, so obviously, 27 million is a lot more than 6.5 that we have unallocated. And so I wonder, just even to be more specific, if it makes sense for all of us as counselors to maybe follow up with Steve with kind of a, how would you spend the 6.5? How would you kind of spend the 6.5? Obviously, again, I think I came up with 20 million of the $27 million of ideas. So I clearly have no problem finding ways to invest in the community. But maybe if we can hold ourselves to that discipline of saying, okay, what are the choices that we would make to get to that 6.5 million? So that maybe the next time we come back, if Steve is able to kind of aggregate that, we can have a more kind of definitive plan, or at least, here's of the 6.5, here's 4 that, there's general agreement on. Here's another 4 that maybe we want to have some further discussion about.
I think that's a great suggestion. And I really appreciate you putting it together in that presentation, and especially what your department heads suggested. So I think that's great if we can all kind of commit to that. Yes, Mike?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I don't want to, no disrespect to Steve, but I don't want to just put it in terms of how would Steve spend the money. I think if all of us go back to Steve, like I can look on that screen now and see that there may be some duplicative, not duplicitous, but duplicative items, if it's $1 million for senior and then another 500 for herd, maybe there could be some combinations. Maybe if we're moving right towards a project, we don't need the 100 for the study. So I think if we all individually talk to Steve, we might be able to self-pair that list a little bit, and we're still going to need to do more, I'm sure, at future meetings.
Yeah, there was some overlap. There was
Absolutely.
some thing, could one drone work instead of two?
No,
But
I really
like,
tried to put in what everybody said.
yeah, no, I
That
think
was- that
I
was
think
the
it's
purpose.
great, and I had encouraged you. I think it's much easier to react off of something than for us to think about how we would spend the money. So now we all have something to react to. I think that's a great suggestion, Mike. If there's things that we think kind of overlap, and maybe some things don't cost as
Yeah, we can pare them down.
We can
can
pare
still
down
say
if-
we agree on the idea, but not the amount. Or
yes,
something.
exactly. So, okay, so we will all commit, talk to Steve, and then we will add this to a future meeting to take some votes on how we are dedicating this funding.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I apologize that I volunteered.
No.
No, I think that's, I was being more like, talk to Steve, but you gave us a homework assignment, which
I
is
gave you
much
homework.
appreciated. I think that's a better way to frame it. Item 13, approval of minutes. Can I have a motion to approve the September 12th, 2022 Town Council meeting minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Great. Any discussion? All in favor, Julie?
Yes.
Jonathan?
Yes.
Anne?
Yes.
Ed?
Aye.
Mike?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
And myself, yes, that's unanimous. Item 14, announcements. Jonathan?
Just two very quick things. I wanted to, first of all, given that it's the fall and that means our marching band is back in action, of course, that also means they're like winning awards already because they're amazing. So just congratulations to them for their first competition. They actually had the highest score of the night at a competition in Medford and swept the caption awards, which is incredible. So lucky to have them and hope people get a chance to check them out. I also just want to highlight a program that the Veterans Office and the Senior Center are doing with the Room to Write, where they'll be inviting seniors and veterans to the Senior Center on Tuesdays in October from 1 to 2:15, basically to learn about and kind of practice sort of writing down memories and memoirs. I think, particularly in our veteran community, so many of the stories and experiences sometimes get lost when they're not told or shared. And so I think this is a really great and creative way to, try to bring some of those stories to light. And my understanding is for the month of November, they'll be repeating this series at an evening time frame. So if folks aren't able to make it during the day, there will be another opportunity. But just a great collaboration, and thanks to our Veterans Office and Room to Write for doing that.
Julie?
I'll just very quickly, the Environmental Sustainability Committee is going to be at the Farmers Market on Saturday. They're recycling, look on the website to see what they're recycling. They're small
pouches,
plastic
right?
pouches,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Oh, that like apple
Like the apple juice, the
apple sauce comes
yogurt
in.
type things, yes. But they'll have lots of information as well about other things they're doing in town.
Anne?
I believe tomorrow is the COVID
booster.
vaccine booster with Melrose from 3 to 7. And it's at Melrose Memorial Hall.
Is it drop-in, or do you have to?
You have to make an appointment.
Make an appointment, but I think there's still appointments.
It's
Yeah.
on the website.
Okay.
Yep. Make an appointment.
I'll be there. So you can see.
Yeah.
And I do just want to say that the scavenger hunt, the Wakefield Business Scavenger Hunt was really fun and very successful. So congratulations on a successful first and hopefully annual scavenger hunt.
I might say a father and son team on bikes came in third. So,
And I think some of the people on bikes probably were not old enough to drive, so it really
yeah,
opened
yeah,
it up.
it
really, there were
did,
16
yes.
teams.
That's why I don't know the picture I saw.
Yeah.
That's-
Yeah.
16 teams. It was a great day from what I heard. So.
It was like the Amazing Race.
It was.
Wakefield edition.
It was.
Very much.
I'm
It
glad you guys
was.
get to go to kick it off.
Yeah.
Next time we will have a team. Some of us were away, but next time we will have a team. Ed?
I just wanted to since we're closing out National Recovery Month, just to mention that I was a few minutes late to this meeting because I was in Reading because we all come together, like all the communities around us in our district. Mystic Valley puts on this great program of recovery and remembrance, and it's kind of a mixed it's like a mixed night because you're celebrating those in recovery, but you're also remembering all those that we lost. And so, while the month of awareness may be closing out, the issue remains for so many folks. And so, I just want to encourage everyone to remember there are resources out there within our own community. Certainly, we talked about that earlier tonight, and just in general, there's just so many opportunities there for folks. So I just hope that anyone that is if you're facing some challenges right now, reaches out and feels comfortable seeking out the help, because it's there. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike or Bob, any updates?
Just another reminder, wave race Saturday morning.
Yep.
Be there.
Yep, starts at the
Lakeside Office Park.
Lakeside, and wow.
The people showing their age said Lord Wakefield.
I-
Every one of them.
I saw that. I saw that. Yeah.
It wasn't Mike.
I just wanted to, if I could, I just wanted to remind seniors that Friday is the deadline to apply for the senior circuit breaker income tax credit. Wakefield matches 100% of the state credit for eligible 65-year-olds. You have to go to the assessor's office at Town Hall, but the deadline is Friday for that.
Thank you, Bob. And on that, just a couple of announcements from you. We are hosting a lunch with the Council on Aging and the Town Council on October 12th from 11:30 to 1. So if you are a senior, please check out the Council on Aging and join us for that lunch. I don't think it's sold out yet, but very shortly. I also, just as successful as the scavenger hunt, HRC had Hispanic Heritage, an event last week that was so great. Thank you everyone that came out in the HRC for organizing it. I don't know if everyone knows, but we have a really good dancer in our town assessor. So we have video and photographs, and I think next time he comes in front of us about tax rates and assessment,
He does a lot
we
of
might
dancing
have to
then,
do
too,
a little,
but yeah.
a little dancing to Latin
I don't think
music.
we'll need to work hard to convince them.
No. Two other little reminders that haven't been said. The Mass Cultural Council gives money to Wakefield. We have about $13,000 that the Mass Cultural Council decides who gets in our town. So it goes to organizations. It also goes to individuals. So if you have a great idea about a cultural event that could happen in Wakefield, please apply. The applications are due October 17th, and they put on great programming every year. Really proud of that. And then the last thing for my fellow counselors, along with Steve's homework about ARPA funding, at our next meeting, I will ask everyone to kind of update on their liaisons, to do a quarterly update on just liaison conversations. Steve or Tom or Sherry?
Nope, nothing, thanks. Just very quickly, Town Day is October 8th.
Yeah.
We have over 70 participants coming in, being either businesses or nonprofits or town boards and what have you. And weather's going to be good. I've been checking the long range, and I think it's going to be a great fun day that people will really, really enjoy. A lot of stuff for kids. We'll be doing flu shots there as well, so it should be a great day. So people should, and it's short, 1 to 4.
Ride your bikes, we're gonna have a bike valet.
We have a bike valet. We'll have the water truck there.
I'm very simple.
Yeah.
That is great. Yes, Town Day. Okay, item 15, matters not anticipated for agenda. Anything to add? Okay, well then, item 16, we are going to adjourn. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Great. And we will vote in favor. Julie?
Aye.
Jonathan?
Yes.
Anne?
Yes.
Ed?
Aye.
Mike?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
And myself, thank you, that passes. Our next regular town council meeting will be Wednesday, October 12th at 7 p.m. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.